Yeah. She said she was going to try, but she's.
There was 5 minutes.
Oh, there's not, they're not there. Good evening. This is the June 6th, 2022 meeting of the master plan, the planning board. Is this when I do this?
Yes.
You get it.
So the first item on the agenda is the master plan update. And I have a couple slides just to do a brief introduction.
And Andrew Mills is joining us via Zoom.
Yes. And Kathy, so far, there's no one else. So you can go to the next slide. So it all began in 2019. MAPC helped kick off the process. We had a small technical assistance grant from MAPC in which the town contributed $10,000. And MAPC conducted a tour of the town, helped set up and conduct a forum, and helped conduct and distribute the survey and tabulated the survey results. We also had a consultants help an additional $2,000, which helped update the data. The committee decided to forgo further help from consultants and update the master plan ourselves to make it a uniquely Southborough plan. In addition to saving the town a considerable amount, towns currently updating their master plans are spending over $100,000 on consultants. The committee felt that as residents of the town, we were more in tune with the direction the town should take in future decision-making. For the first time, schools were included in the master plan to make it a more cohesive plan. The master plan committee was initially made up of 23 voting members, and that was eventually decreased to 13 voting members. The members were from 16 different town entities and members at large. The members took the plan back to the entities they represented to receive comments throughout the process. The committee began the process by setting the goals for Southborough for the next 10 years, and the chapters were written based on those goals, not the other way around. And the next slide, I'm extremely grateful and in awe of the talent of the master plan committee members and the hard work they put in writing the individual chapters. And I give special kudos to Judith Watson, who is the chair back here. She was the director of version control and somehow kept track of all the comments, compiled them into a draft so the master plan committee could discuss and debate at each meeting, and then pulled the whole thing together with consistent formatting to boot. She did this from version 1 through 500 or whatever we're on now. A true magician. 3 years, 1 pandemic, and we have updated the master plan, which is ready to be adopted. And the next slide. So the next steps, the planning board will be asked to accept or adopt the 2021 master plan tonight. And then the master plan committee will be dissolved with the vote of the planning board. And then we'll ask the planning board to vote to create an implementation committee to keep the momentum going and just make sure that we stay on track. And that's that. I will take any comments. We're not going to go through the entire master plan. It's been out since May 4th. So any comments or suggestions? Yes.
Okay. So I reviewed it. So I reviewed it extensively the first time, went through it, amazing work. And now the final product with the photos and just the layout, it is a uniquely Southborough plan. What a complete difference from 2008. The data, the updates, I don't know if it was just the visual impact of it. I felt like I was actually digesting it more than just kind of reviewing it more for editorials or edits, but I commend the master planning committee and everybody who participated in it. Thank you for leading that whole endeavor, and congratulations. I think it's a work of art.
Thank you. Anyone else on the board? Debbie was also, Andrew?
Yeah, I just want to commend Mimi for your stewardship of this. You were a great leader throughout the whole process to drive it to the finish line through the pandemic and changes throughout the last 3 years. Great job. It does look amazing. Thank you so much. The town really is going to benefit from this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. You made it through.
I also would like to just quickly say thank you, because it was a tremendous help to the planning department staff as well. That was such a great read and it made it happen.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Mr. Stivers,
Thank
also
you.
a member of the committee.
Thank you, and I would just reinforce Ms. Luttrell's comments. I would add a couple of people. I think that there was phenomenal support from the planning department through not only the town planner, but the administrative folks in the department. Sarah Hecker, initially, and Colleen picked it up, and a lot of work there. The day-to-day stuff was wonderful to have. And reinforcing the participation point, I think one of the failings last time around the 2008 plan, which I was involved in peripherally at least, was that the consultants went away and wrote it, and there was little connection to the town committees and management team out of that. So it tended to sit around on the shelf, and surprisingly little got implemented, unfortunately, from that. This time, I think it's fair to say, as Mimi suggested, that most of the major committees in town had representatives and had ongoing conversations about it and contributed to the actual language in the various sections. So there is a deep relationship now between the operating groups, if you will, of the town and the plan, and hopefully the objectives and recommendations in the plan are very representative of what the various committees want to do going forward. I think that's a huge start on implementation, and then the implementation infrastructure that is going to be proposed, I think, again, gives us a great chance to actually get a number of things done this time, of which I think there's some very important ones that will be great to have more momentum behind. So that's great. And again, for a relatively low out-of-pocket cost, it's a phenomenal product, and it's basically ours, which I think is the best part. So thanks to all who have participated, and again, thanks to the planning board for driving this over the finish line, and particularly to Judith, who was the motive power behind much of this in terms of actually making the real work happen behind the scenes. So thank you again. Great to be part of it. Lisa Brush and I participated from the select board, and I think we are able to push forward on some of these things from our jobs on the select board as well. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Is Helen Bell here? You have to say something?
Sure. He wrote the last one.
I think I heard my name. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, the audio's quiet. Thank you. It was a pleasure to help participate on behalf of the EDC. It's also a pleasure to read this as being a resident. I'm able to skim the 100+ page document, which that was part of the packet, so thank you for that. But also just a reminder, if you're sharing slides in the room, they weren't shared in Zoom, so no one in Zoom land got the benefit of looking at the beautiful slides you prepared, Mimi. So just a heads up for the rest of your agenda. But just a hats off and kudos to all who participated in this, as you like to say, and I agree, a uniquely Southborough plan.
Thank you.
On an administrative level, we should really discuss sometime in the next week or two, printing some actual copies to have library and for town administrator, town clerk.
So would the next will be to adopt or accept the master plan?
Yes, the select board doesn't have a quorum, so it will be the planning board unless you brought any other further comments from the select board in concern or change, things like that.
No, we did not. I thought what Sam said was absolutely on point. And
Maybe I'd like to make a motion, we accept the master plan committee's write-up as drafted and presented this evening.
Second.
And here, a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Mills, yes?
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Master plan is accepted.
And then, should we dissolve the master plan committee?
Yes, you did do the final minutes, I saw.
Yeah, we did it
So you
at the
At the
meeting.
meeting, it was very good. I've never seen that
I
before.
learned that from the ARPA committee.
Yes.
And
because
maybe I'd like to make a motion, we dissolve the master plan committee as the master plan has been accepted.
Second.
Very good, a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor? Latrell,
Mills, yes? Oh,
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Very good. And then I don't know if we want to discuss this tonight and vote on it next time, but I would like to propose that we create an implementation committee of 5 members to help shepherd this through and just keep in touch with the committees and make sure that they stay on track or give them any help that they need to follow through with the plan.
Were there recommendations from the master plan committee as to where those members would come from as far as representing different other boards or committees, or would it just be random?
Well, we have 2 volunteers. We have Debbie and Judith. To start us off.
Like, you have planning
Yeah.
board rep, select board rep. Maybe
Open
from
space.
Yeah.
open space or conservation.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Something in my mind is triggering the word committee versus working group. Like committee has to have some sort of formalization versus working group, and I don't know what the criteria is. But do you know?
So I think that there's little difference really, like committees have to post meetings and do minutes.
Okay.
And a working group pretty much does too, if it's given a charge to do something. Isn't that correct,
I
Sam?
think any group appointed by a board effectively has to post meetings and do minutes and have forums and all that kind of stuff. At least that's what I understood from town clerk.
so there's probably no real distinction. Working group sounds temporary, where committee doesn't necessarily sound temporary, but we don't think there's any real difference as far as what they do. Administrative.
And we could get clarification, you could, unless it's urgent, we could get a little bit more detail on that for the 27th. And then you could maybe, there may be some citizen activity forms, people who are interested and have, maybe a couple more members on it. In addition to Debbie and Judith. So we could create the committee of the working group at that date.
Yeah.
With a little bit more.
So is it a
Yeah.
committee or is it a working group? What are you expecting them to come back and report on?
Implementation, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, they want
to work on
follow
the
the
implementation chapter.
Kind of a follow.
Yeah, so they'll be getting
To encourage
updates.
people, they will attend board meetings of different groups so that it keeps it in front of people's face, so that it doesn't get forgotten. for others. 10 years later, only 10% is done.
Do you want to speak to that? Andrew?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what committee was.
Oh, it's to keep it in front of the different boards and committees so that action is taken to do the implementation of the goals that were prepared in the master plan.
Correct, yeah, yeah, so the vision that we talked about at the master plan committee, so this would be a subcommittee or working group, whatever the appropriate organization structure is of the planning. So that it is a planning board process, an approved document. And what we envisaged was each of the recommendations being assigned to a specific board and committee. As Mimi pointed out, they've been involved in reviewing those as we've gone through the process. What we we're looking to do is have members of the implementation group meet with those boards and commissions just twice a year to keep the focus, to answer questions, provide support, and make sure that we've got this ongoing audit trail, if you like, of where we are. And then it would be a rolling 6 months. So every quarter, we would look to come back to the planning board with an update. So we phase in or cycle in the feedback from each board and commission, but come back to the planning board every quarter with the most recent update.
And hopefully that encourages implementation.
I mean, we can, maybe if the planning board is in agreement, we could just draft a charge for the committee. The outline is an implementation chapter, but we could draft a more formal charge for the committee. And bring that back to the next planning board.
On the 27th.
I think that would help just for volunteers too, is what is the charter and then what is that specific ask? Because I think that would hopefully be with roles and responsibilities, certainly providing clarity helps to get the volunteerism.
And so is the planning board in agreement to create this implementation committee? Andrew, are you on board with that? Thumbs up.
Yes, I'm on board with it.
Do we need to take a vote to do that? Or?
It can't hurt.
Create it?
That doesn't hurt to take it.
Well, you're gonna move forward with getting a charge created, get the details on, the requirements of open meeting law, so it can be crystal clear. And
Then send out something for people to be interested.
Okay,
to
so
send out.
vote next time, create it the next time, on the 27th.
yeah,
Okay, very good.
if that's what you're on board.
That'll work.
Okay, does that sound good?
Yep.
We need to have it sent out. Everybody.
Very good.
And with Judith, are you going to, is the charges in the master plan?
There's in chapter 9 implementation plan, there's a outline of what people are looking for the implementation group to be doing, and I would suggest we build a charge on that and share a feedback.
So I'll touch base with you, Judith, and we can do something for the next meeting, which one? Very good. Very good, thank you. Thank you.
Turn on.
Yeah, it's sitting there in the dark.
I thought it was
I had to
my
check to
eyes.
see if I have my dark glasses.
You don't
I'm
like the
feeling the
the
same
mood
way.
lighting?
I know, like, what's going on? Oh, so
Thank
much
you.
better.
Oh, that is much better.
Thanks, Colleen. I could have gotten.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Foods. Do you want to update on that?
Absolutely. So at the last public hearing on May 23rd, 2022, the Public hearings for major site plan approval and lower impact development special permit will continue to this evening. At that time, there was an extension request filed with the town clerk extending the action time frame to June 10th, 2022, which corresponds with the meeting tonight plus 4 days. For the record, we have an extension request prepared. Should the meeting need to be continued with to the June 27th Public Planning Board meeting and action for a decision to July 1st. So we prepare that. In the interim, the draft decisions were provided to town council for review. If you recall, at the last planning board meeting, we went through the 5 waivers. There was one for major site plan regarding parking, and then there were 4 waivers related to lid regulations, and those were all granted with feedback based on conservation that they were in conflict with those permits. Then the planning board proceeded to start, and the applicant team, we proceeded to go through the conditions of approval from the beginning, and I believe we made it to like 14. We started, or 12. I don't think that we actually discussed in great detail number 14. Right. It was 12. Probably. So number 12. So in the interim, when those were being drafted, before they went to town council, we got some review comments from Attorney Pizzoni, representing Kent Screws, who provided some input into those. His input is represented in the decision. I just want to make sure I'm saying that accurately. Look at the decision for major site plan. And again, the conditions in both of the draft decisions are the same, so that in the future there's no confusion. We have them all. So I believe, let's see, at the last meeting, Marnie and Colleen were kind enough to take comments on the fly and insert them into the document so that we could update them the next morning.
Karina, which, you're talking about the draft, not the lid, but the draft decision of major site plan approval?
Correct. It's dated May 25th,
Okay.
2022.
But the one that's in the Dropbox is the one that has the updates you just mentioned, right?
It's that's the same document. The decision has not been altered
Okay.
based on feedback received other than was at the last meeting. There were some minor edits like not, some of the planting review would be done by conservation in addition town planner approval and consultation to Open Space Preservation Commission prior to installation. So if there were any changes to the plants that were proposed or location changes, it would come before not only conservation, but the planning department and also Open Space Preservation Commission. Just look a little bit further here. There was discussion about native wildlife grass wet meadow and terminology that was represented on the plans and also how we spoke about it in the decision so that it was aligned. And these culminated from several comments that Open Space Preservation Commission Chair provided to the planning board at the last meeting. See,
Did we finalize the dollar amount on the bond for that?
yes,
Plantings?
11,400.
correct. Yeah, that everything was agreed to up through,
I think that was last thing.
that was number 13, repair and completion of plantings for prior permit. Because at that point, we have installation construction. Then the next condition was number 14. And what I did is based on the discussion at the last planning board meeting, I inserted a paragraph in the parentheses defining where that was, that as the planning board has taken the decision that Ken's Food has not complied with subject code and Ken's Foods believes this was addressed in a prior approval, need to work through town council to construct language that suggests that the planning board recognizes the zoning bylaw 174-12C1. We need to also discuss the form of the bond or tri-party. Please look at the language and speak with planning board chair and attorney zoning, and also these drafts with those changes, this draft with those changes from the last planning board was then to go to town council for review. Okay, so we never made it past 14, or we never finished 14 and continued through number 20 conditions, which tend to be kind of boilerplate conditions. So these decisions were sent to town council for review. Town council focused on condition number 14 related to the noise concerns and the requirement for loading bays to be enclosed if there's frequent nighttime use. Attorney Pizzoni was included in that correspondence to town council, so that he knew, because he had requested the ability to consult with or correspond with town council directly, which I believe you had the opportunity.
Yeah, we've been, unfortunately, I was out of commission for 2 days last week.
Right.
I responded before I went in for surgery, and then he and I followed up again this weekend. I got him back because he asked me to go back through it because we were using a copy that was the original draft. He made some edits, I made some edits, and it was hard to track where we were. So he had asked me in an email on Thursday while I was in surgery, if I could take a crack at it to get it back to him in the form that shows just my final edits for his recent edits.
Well, we had supplied town council with or you copied us on the email you sent to town council. So town council came through and he provided a markup of condition number 14. And then Attorney Pizzoni responded with additional markup
Right.
to that Word document. In the interim.
But then he asked me to synthesize it so we both knew what we were looking at, because there was overlap, there was blue, there was green, there was red. So
Yeah, there were a couple
we
iterations.
reduced it down to that, which accepted most of his changes. And I sent that back to him and didn't hear back from him because he didn't get it till yesterday.
Well, let me just finish my chronology, then it might clarify
Okay.
what's going on. So, so the draft decision went to town council on May 24th for review. On May 26th, we received a legal opinion response regarding condition number 14 specifically. On the 27th, we received an email from J. Crow, Scott Doty representing them with a submission number 6 with some updates to the planting, the plan sheets that had been requested as well.
Right.
Or they were to be in there. And then we requested hard copies as a formal submission because that's the process. So on June 2nd, we received the hard copies, which were then provided to the planning board for review. On June 2nd, we had the opportunity to consult with town council to discuss the changes that were being proposed to condition 14. On the 3rd, we were copied on an email, or there was an email from town council and Attorney Pizzoni disagreeing on the recommended approach by town council. So town council felt that he recommends that the planning board address the noise concern and the loading days as part of this current permit, instead of pushing that down the path beyond this. You know, the Board of Health can still be involved, as they usually are, in reviewing submissions, but he recommended that it appeared that both parties had similar path to address the noise concerns, which was a noise barrier wall of some sort. Clarifying that it's not just the refrigerator trucks, but there were also some concerns that what if the loading bays did still generate some noise? Maybe not as much as that, but like the whole thing should be considered based on the noise reports, one from the abutters and one from the Ken's Foods team. So then today we received an email that that town council was reconfirming his recommendation that the planning board move forward in that direction. So that if the two noise specialists came together in an agreement now, rather than months from now, that there would be some solution to the noise, quote, sound barrier wall, that the applicant could provide supplemental, maybe conceptual level as to where that noise barrier wall might be located, not in any great detail. And I make the corollary to when people come in with a site plan and they want to put a sign on their property. We don't necessarily need to know if all the super details, but we need to know where it is and kind of the limits of the size or what it might impact, where it's going. Is it impacting parking, egress, ingress, whatever, wetlands, whatever. So that, if that could be worked out, then the planning board could, the goal is to get you to move forward with your project. So town council recommended to handle that now and get the noise specialist to agree on something, provide some kind of supplemental plan showing some kind of concept or layout of the wall. Doesn't have to have construction detail and all that. And then the planning board could vote on that, and then it would be assured that something would happen and the code would be addressed and the noise issue. So I defer back. That was my update, just so that you know where we stand. And that brings us to this evening. Public hearings.
Could I be heard?
First, let me hear from the board.
Okay, all right.
Because this hasn't been discussed with the board since the last meeting.
Well, I think they should have the benefit of where we are with the Board of Health, what the plan is, and also the fact that even if we give you a sketch and you say, yeah, that's okay, and you approve this, then we have to come back with a modification with a minute detail of where it's going in the property. Is it going to interfere with circulation? How is it going to be built? Is a truck going to be able to circulate around it? And that's why we're saying, close this out now with all these requirements for us to continue with the planning board, approve a plan that their expert and us and the Board of Health come to a consensus on that should be able to work. Because right now, the plan that was submitted by the abutters was a 980-foot wall along the property line at 16 feet tall. The sound coming from the refrigeration units next to the building, they're going to go over that. Okay, and that was done all on modeling. It wasn't done on real sound effects. Our report that was submitted to you on May 11 was real sound effects. We had a monitor 500 feet in the woods from the Ken's operation, monitoring the noise to see what we could hear. The only thing it heard was refrigeration. It didn't hear any truck movement or any of that. But, and so we believe a wall in the middle of the parking lot, close in proximity to the refrigeration units and to the bays, will stop that sound there rather than letting it go up, because as you know, sound rises. And it would go over, and that is the best route. Board of Health said, okay, get the two experts together, let them discuss it. Unfortunately, our expert had to go to Kansas City because his father had a heart attack, but he did reach out to the abutters expert to do a Zoom call this week to try to agree on format, how they would do the testing, what they would do, and what they were going to, basically design the plan so that we could go back to the Board of Health in the middle of the month and say, this is the type of testing we're gonna do to be sure we address the real problem. Not just build something because somebody wants it built. We want to stop this vibration, this noise from getting back here.
So can the board discuss the process, Bill, before you get too far down with your?
Well, I'm getting to that because if we give you a sketch like town council suggests, this is where it's gonna go, we still have to come back to you with a modification. And we're agreeing in the section 14 to come back to you with a modification after we've done all this work. And we have a final design agreed to by the Board of Health and the abutters. And it bewilders me that you want to keep this open and run it till what will be probably September.
Well, so I watched both the May 24th and the May 31st Board of Health meetings.
Yeah.
In the May 31st one, it seems like there's a path forward and the two sound experts are gonna get together and come up with a plan. I don't think that's September.
But, no, the concept, the testing is gonna take, you gotta go out there, you gotta place monitors, you gotta determine where they're gonna go. It takes weeks to get that done. We want to try to get that done before 4th of July because this is the busy season. This month, you're gonna get the most noise this month. So we're trying to do that and get out there to do that with them. But then once you get that, they gotta get on their CADNA models. They have to design everything that, where it should go, how tall it should be, the thickness of it, the ability to have sound bounce off it, or hit and sit right there. So they would design the wall at that point, and we would then submit to you with a plan saying, this is the designed wall that we believe, everybody believes is gonna work, and it's gonna go in the middle of that parking lot in Ken's. But we need to show you that it has circulation, fire safety, and all the things you would normally do at a site plan review. So we're gonna have to come back to you for a modification at some point. You're gonna get the last bite at the apple, is what I'm trying to say.
So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that if they come up with the plan of where it's gonna be, we don't need the nitty gritty. And it can be on the plan.
No, you need the nitty gritty to approve a site plan.
Well,
It's gonna show where the found footings are going.
Yeah.
Because there's a pole tech system and everything under the ground out there. You have to make sure it's not gonna impact you. And I added in here that we have to go to conservation as well, because conservation has jurisdiction over what's under that parking lot too.
so back to the board. So
Andrew first, or how do you do?
oh, Andrew.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yes.
Put a little sign there.
Picture of him. There he is.
Yeah. So town council is recommending that we tie the sound to this plan now and do it all and bundle it all together, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I can understand that because I don't want to go forward and people think that we approved a site plan that we weren't going to have a mitigation for the sound. And, we could, there's no guarantee that anyone would have to come back anyhow. So it makes sense why he's saying that. I guess that's where I stand. Thank you.
Mr. Stein.
It seems like we skipped number 13. Am I mistaken? I know we had gone through 12 and had agreed on 12, but I didn't. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. We do not do
Okay.
number 13.
So I guess I'm asking the chair, when are we going to come back to 13? After we do 14?
Well, the question now is the process and whether we're going to continue with the conditional, if what then number 14, or if we're going to try and tie it all into this
Okay.
approval.
But it seems like we are currently talking specifically about number 14.
Right. 'cause
And
that's the-
so, okay, I just wanted to make sure at some point we're gonna You know, we don't want to forget about 13.
It's the big picture condition that will change the path.
Okay,
See, we don't have to address all the
So-
conditions if they go down, agreeing to submit some kind of a conceptual
Okay.
layout so that the planning board has something.
hey, just hang on a second. So it seems like, to me anyway, we're like, the September thing is not necessary. We're not, I don't, and here's why. Because my read on this wasn't that town council was 100% permanently opposed to the idea of handling this in the order of conditions. It's just, it seems like he's not comfortable with the conditions as they are now.
And
So I don't like, and there's just, like you said, there's people, you know, with personal health issues and all kinds of stuff going on. Mr. Talman isn't here tonight to explain his position.
I know that.
Why not give us a, you know, why not extend at least to the next meeting so we can get that
If
point cleared up?
if I could address that, I was hoping that we could get rid of, agree on everything. 13, skip 14, I mean, everything after 14, I think we agreed to. Anyhow, let's see. Except,
There was
yeah, I
something in
talked
13.
to town council about, no, that's 5, and the 20, it's after 20. 15, 16, 20 is the last one, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And when I say.
So 15
when I-
through 20,
When I
15
say,
through 20, we don't have any issues with, so I don't think we have to modify anything. So if we can wrap up 13 now, then all we have to think about is 14, which I agree with you. And my position was gonna be tonight, because Ken's wants to move this, they want to get it going as soon as they can. We have to order steel. You know how long it is you have to order steel out? We figured during this process, at least if we know we're gonna be able to build this after we work out number 14, which requires us to work it out, do the mitigate, you know, propose the mitigation and bring it back to you. And then we can build that in the fall with the rest of it, you know? So to us, it's a timing issue as well. Otherwise, it's a whole nother year. And we don't want the people to have to deal with this next winter with the sound. We want to address it before then if we could. So my suggestion was going to be, let's try to get through it all. If you feel you need to have town council and I work on 14 a little bit more, that's fine.
before we vote to approve.
Right, because
Okay.
if I was sitting in your chair, I probably want the same thing. I'd rather have a better comfort level. But I can tell you what Ken's wants me to do is they want me to say, okay, we'll agree. We're gonna work on 14. Let's get some more input here tonight if we can as well. Wrap up the others so that the only issue we have is 14. Town council and I can work on that to clean. I mean, there are a few other little nits in it that I think it's more language between you and I and him. It's not gonna change anything substantively. And we can continue, but I thought your next meeting was, I mean, I
It's
told.
June 27th.
Yeah, I thought it was the 20th. How come it's 3 weeks?
Because they made the 20th a holiday.
Federal holiday.
Yeah, it's in your,
Okay,
Observed on
all
that.
right.
so we had alternate dates depending on. what-
Yeah, and that gives us a lot of time for him and I to get together on this, because he and I, what he sent me and I sent back to him here, 90% of this is his version of it. with
So,
only-
I mean, I think we're going a little far. I mean, this point may be moot if I'm in the minority on this anyway.
Yeah, I
So-
know, like,
I just wanted to, I mean, the chair is asking us to go through the board and voice where we are process wise, and I'm
Yeah.
just saying, if we had, just me personally,
Yeah.
as one member, if we had ironclad language that by a date certain, you know, point, you were coming back for a modification to the site plan to address it to our satisfaction. And if town council was comfortable enough with that, that these permits could be granted for your project that's in front of us now, that might work. So,
I mean, there's a penalty built in here if we don't have it done. So, you know, and that was his decision for the penalty rather than a bond. He says, because how are we going to enforce a bond? We'd rather have the penalty. I said, I agree with you. I said, I don't think a bond does anything for it. But so I kind of agree with the path that you're talking about. But I know that, you know, we need to wrap it up soon. I'd like to winnow down that we only have one condition to be focusing on, so the town council and I can work through that. But if we're gonna go through that, and then we come back on the 27th, and, you know, you're gonna say, well, no, we're just gonna leave it open. I can tell you now, we might as well close it tonight. Okay, I mean, I'm being frank and honest.
Yeah, I think from the process perspective, what Jesse just verbalized, like, I think if we come down to alignment from a process perspective, I agree with Council Tellerman, and to be able to make sure that we have some ability at some later point, and if conditions can work out that way, we can align on other things. I'm comfortable with the process proceeding, as Jesse's just mentioned it too. So I'm in line with Jesse.
So could I just add something to this, just so
Sure.
that it's very clear? In discussion with town council and in reviewing correspondence, he made it clear that he recommends finding a solution that works for the noise as part of the current site plan. If that part of this permit, if that includes, he was weary of saying push it beyond it with a condition, because the Board of Health, albeit involved with the noise part of it, the Board of Health he said town council is also worried about a process that is conditioned upon a submittal or more plans later in the event that certain conditions are not satisfied. Let me read that again. Town council is also wary about a process that is conditioned upon a submittal or more plans later in the event that certain conditions are not satisfied. This can be difficult to enforce and does not allow for public participation and for appellate process. The Board of Health doesn't necessarily have the same control to affect the mitigation as planning board has as part of site plan approval. So that's why he was specific. I just want to make sure that the planning board is crystal clear on the recommendation from town council, who felt it was best to find a solution that works for the noise, and that since there was this common ground with the sound barrier wall, that perhaps the applicant supply some information about a barrier wall, which could possibly require a modification after, if you're changing it significantly.
It's gonna need a modification. It's going in the middle of the parking lot. Even if it's on the
And
edge
if
of the
you know-
parking lot.
So I just want to make sure you understand town council. And he says it didn't have to be like, not necessarily fine-tuned details, enough that the planning board can determine that it makes sense with the noise experts agreeing with the solution.
So, Mr. Pizzoni, have you even spoken to town council yet about what we're talking about?
I sent him an email yesterday asking him to
Right.
make time.
We
for me
haven't had a
today.
chance to communicate.
No, I got an email back from
Right.
him today, and then I responded and said, I'm gonna be driving for 2 hours to come up to Southborough. If you get some time, call me.
I guess it just seems like you just need more communication with.
And I'm hopeful that that is it, but if it turns out that we're sitting here on whenever we come back, that'll be the last date, and it'll end up in front of some other arbiter. Yeah.
Now, there's just 3 months. What, I'm asking that, what is prohibitive in coming up with a conceptual layout at this point? Are there not agreements with the abutters noise expert? Are you that far apart? Because it appears that when you relayed to me the information about the Board of Health meetings, that they were actually
Yes, it is. That's it.
Yeah, we prepared a concept plan. But that's just it, it's a concept plan. And,
Right.
and we told the Board of Health what our concept was, and they told them what their concept was. Their concept was not based on real-time data. So we're
So
hoping.
we're not going to debate the noise expert.
Yeah, okay, but you know what? We have a concept. This doesn't do you any good if you attach it to your decision. It doesn't.
Well-
You know why? Because we have to come back when we do the design. That's when you have more clout. That's when, you know, you have the final say on this. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I understand what your position is, Madam Chair. I'm hearing something else, maybe a little different over here. And if we're gonna go down this trail,
Not exactly, but
no, but if we're gonna go down this trail, I want you to know that I need town council to respond. We've got several weeks. He and I need to go back and forth. We need to fine tune this. And if we don't come to an agreement, then you're gonna have to make a determination on what you're gonna do. And as I see it right now, the only issue outstanding before this board is 14. There's nothing else.
Not necessarily.
Well, I'll ask you tonight if you have other issues about the plan too, because I'd like to address those. If you do, because that needs to get worked out.
So would the board feel comfortable asking town council to be here on the 27th and hash this out? It appears that he was uncomfortable having,
Just one-on-one conversations.
yeah, well, no, he was uncomfortable with the way the condition was. He said we couldn't do the bond. He said that leaving it up to another board and having to come back for further review has been problematic with current case law.
So is there any way that like maybe Karina, you, Mimi, Mr. Pizzoni and Jay can have like a separate session and try to hammer that out and then come to the 27th with because my fear of bringing, honestly, being a daughter of an attorney, like 2 attorneys in a room, I don't know if we'll get to resolution on the 27th either.
No.
In the interest of, you know, trying to be good partners for Ken's as well. Is that something that's feasible that we could ask to get done so that there is something that has kind of both parties collaborating and a willingness to?
Just one point on that is the prior chair had often told me in the past, in my short time here, that, and I think he'd expressed it to applicants and developers alike, that if the applicant has an attorney here, the planning board should have an attorney here to mitigate the disagreement and get on the same page. I can talk to town council and we can try and set that up. I did ask him to be here tonight, but he wasn't available. I did reconfirm his stance, just to make clear that he felt that the bond was not an appropriate approach to secure solving noise issues and concern with the loading bays because the town couldn't use that bond to go build on private property.
That's right.
It didn't, and it's not like a subdivision where you have a public road and infrastructure's in, but there's people already with occupancy permits. And the town that has to provide them a service, you take that money and the town can hire someone to build it. It's not the same thing. So the bond agreements didn't work. I was concerned because as Attorney Pizzoni does, you know, lean towards wanting the Board of Health to handle this. Now, town council opinion, to the best of my understanding, is that it would be best if it was handled here now as part of this permitting because of legal recourse, the teeth that a planning board has versus, and if you're not that far apart with the noise experts as is being expressed here, it's my understanding that what would stop you from coming up with a solution now with enough level of detail, and again, I'm pointing to town council, so it didn't have to be, you know, fine-tuned detail, but enough information that the planning could make a decision that made them feel comfortable to say, yes, this looks good, we're protected, what's going to address some of these issues we're concerned with. If later a modification has to happen because something changes more significantly or whatever, or slightly, you'd at least have something to address this concern, which is the loading bay enclosures with frequent nighttime use, and the noise from the vibration is supposedly from the refrigerator. So town council reiterated that several times And that's.
So I guess I understand that. I guess my point is there a possibility that there's two meetings with Talman,
Yeah.
right? So you guys have one, and then he still attends the June 27th meeting. So I still think that's
We
important.
can ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if we have a consensus in a final document, he doesn't have to be here, and I don't have to be here, because you just vote on the document, if that's what you want to do. But that, no, that's fine, and I'm all for getting together and sitting at a table. That's how we've always done it in the past. And it's usually been with the planning board chair, the two town council, and the developer or their engineer to sit and sift it through to make sure things work properly and verbiage is acceptable. One thing I do want to point out is that the noise that is at issue here, and even the moving trucks, is Board of Health jurisdiction. Okay, and it isn't even their jurisdiction in some aspects because it's federally regulated. Ken's is, you know, they're coming to the table and trying to work with everybody here. And
Well,
they,
it's also in our bylaw.
and I just, if I could just be heard for a second, please.
For a second.
We met last year at the ZBA and we were told that there was an expert from the abutters that was going to provide us information. We gave them all our information so they could do their analysis and everything and have it before we came here in September. That was not done. We didn't get a report from the abutter expert. It was dated in April 3rd or something like that, whatever it was. I forget the date. And we didn't see it until a couple of weeks ago. I honestly am not sure they don't see the urgency to get this done. So, you know, to place the burden on us to run and chase them down, let's just say, I'm not confident that they're going to react in the timeline that we want them to. I'm hopeful that they will. They have the opportunity. They've presented once. Our guy has already reached out to them again. I'd like to move this ball. I think your idea of having a pre-meeting is excellent. I'd like to hear back from town council on my last email because I basically said to him, we're agreeing to the concept in the decision. We're the ones that would be appealing. So if we're agreeing to it, there's no issue. You know, and I agree, he's right. If you put something in there that was forcing our hand to go to another agency, we don't have to abide by it unless we agree to it. But we're agreeing to it, and it's written in a lot of documents and on a lot of meetings that we're agreeing.
Well, so the noise issue is in our zoning code, and that's what those covered bays.
The loading dock
So,
noise
Because,
issues.
excuse me, please.
Yeah.
Because noise pollution is a Board of Health jurisdiction does not mean it's not a planning board jurisdiction. So it's both.
Okay, let's see what the judge says.
So it's on that particular condition 14, we want to try and have myself, town planner, attorney for zoning and town council, and then have him here on the 27th.
Yeah, that would be my request. And then if it's, again, like if it's town council's suggestion that it's not a condition, it's part of the site plan. I think that just needs to have a conversation prior to coming to the 27th and then having him to attend.
Okay. So on that particular condition, is that amenable?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Litt?
Well, I don't have a dog in this fight, but I've been listening to this for roughly a while. I thought I'd make an observation. It sounds to me as though Ken is anxious to proceed with their development, even if there is some risk that the work required to solve the noise problem is unknown. It occurs to me that one of the things that I've heard done in the past is that people have made a condition saying there will not be an occupancy permit issued until something. So in this case, maybe there's no occupancy permit until the noise situation is satisfactorily resolved as judged by and figure out what combination of the Board of Health and the experts is required. I mean, it seems to me that there are a bunch of people who are trying to be reasonable, right? I mean, Ken repeatedly says they want to solve the problem, they're committed to solving the problem. And the butters are saying, well, we want to solve too, we're just a little bit skeptical. As an engineer, I can tell you that putting a plan together, if you don't agree on what the problem is not particularly productive. And so it seems to me that when you have your discussions with various councils, you might want to look at, what allows Ken to proceed at their own risk. Is subject to not being able to make use of the building until this issue is satisfactorily resolved. Funny, that's my 2 cents from a distance from the details that seem to be tying people up here.
Thank you.
I hope it helps.
Is occupancy even an issue in this matter?
No, we have occupancy, but we're building an addition, so I guess maybe,
But you're not gonna vacate the building.
no.
No, but you would not get an occupancy permit for the addition.
Is that even required?
Yes, any building.
The addition would, yeah, the building inspector's gonna have to go through and make sure it's built to specs. And
I'm
it
not
meets the
sure.
conditions.
It's a good question for Mr. Tallman.
Yeah, that's something we could bring up at the discussion, because I have concerns with that too, tying it to occupancy, because I remember discussions in prior projects where there was talk about that.
I'm just trying to find something that ensures
Yep.
that Ken has, skin in the game, and you're not giving them a green light, and you're not keeping them from making progress on both their addition and solving the problem.
Right, as a rule.
He built in a sentence that says failure to comply so may result in cease and desist order or other appropriate zoning enforcement. So he's already tried to protect you in that regard. He's doing his job.
Okay, so the path forward on this particular 14 has been set.
Yeah.
So should we? go-
Can we
Yes.
resolve? Yeah, we can resolve everything else.
Yeah, so back through, so I have questions on landscaping, and then we have the rest of the conditions to go through, which would like, are you, Mr. Mills, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting you there. Are you in agreement with the path forward?
I am. Works. for
Okay.
me.
So the rest of the conditions or landscaping?
Start with number
Yeah,
13.
13.
Go back to 13.
Okay. So we will start on number 13, Andrew, of the conditions.
You can take edits.
So number 13, could I point something on here? You want me to go through them? or-
Sure.
It's in the order of conditions. It can be done. It can be done. It's not nuisance. It's not impossible. You know what we're talking about, right? Okay.
So, is everybody ready?
Yes.
All right, so condition 13 is regards to repair and completion of plantings for prior permits. A was the replacement of 2 trees at the sound barrier wall. It was noted that 1 tree is missing and another is questioning the condition. The line trees extending from the end of the existing sound barrier wall along emergency access drive to Deerfoot Road. These trees were planted to establish a year-round visual buffer to benefit the nearby homes on Deerfoot. The applicant shall replace the 2 dead trees along the edge of the emergency driveway to the east of the sound barrier wall. I don't think anybody has a problem.
Well, those are as we wrote them. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are fine.
You can do that too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So the question came in part B where it was replacement plantings for the warehouse renovation bioretention area. So in the new set of plans, there's a bioretention area where the landscaper, wetland scientist proposed all the plantings be included there. And then they would be moved out. I'm not sure how that works, but the condition at the very, this last sentence says installation of planting shall be completed prior to work related to the warehouse expansion beginning. because that is in the existing permits for your order of conditions, for your notice of intent,
Yep.
that's where that came from.
Okay.
So we can't delete, we can delete it, but you're still
We,
required.
Yeah, we're still
we
required.
agree with you, and we can do it. We just, normal construction process, you'd like to do it towards the end, but we can do it.
Yeah. I could see, you know, there
Yeah.
are,
Yeah, you,
okay,
you
Yeah.
would usually want to do it after all the site work and everything.
Yeah.
Done to put the foundation.
But some of it's remote anyway.
Yeah.
So,
so this is the bio
Yeah.
retention area plantings. Okay. There was discussion about the grassed areas around the immediate envelope, which Open Space Preservation Commission wanted that particular native type of growth there. That is not the bio retention planting area, and maybe you can explain, are any of those plantings?
but the entire area curb to the outside is the bioretention area. The grass itself is part of the bioretention area.
Adjacent to the building that says ABD?
No, we're talking about the bio, so you're not talking about the
No, I'm
bioretention
talking
area.
about the grass areas right next to the building.
Right, if you go, yeah, and those are areas delineated as A through H, yeah, on C5. Or C6, let me see here. C5, on C5, the area is A through I.
Yeah.
Along the east and north bounds of the expansion.
These areas
Those are
right
those
here,
areas, yeah.
That, this is the bio retention.
Those are the areas that I think we had discussed.
Yeah,
I'm sure they were.
so this could be built after, around the immediate building, but it's the bio retention area that had that contingency on it.
Right.
Okay?
That's correct.
Just want to make sure that's.
That's good. That's good clarity. Yeah.
So would you have to move the limit of work out a little bit then? Because some of it's coming through there. And there's a note about,
Oh, sure. It's, the limit of work would include those areas, but those are lawn areas and it's not,
well, there's trees and shrubs there.
in through A through I.
No, in the bio retention area where the limit of work.
Okay, now we're talking about the bioretention area.
Well, we're still talking about that.
Yeah, okay. That entire area is the bioretention area,
Yeah,
including the grasses that are on the outer edges of it. Because that grass plays a very important role in terms of capturing sediments as it runs off the pavements. In fact, we call for it in the O&M plan for it to be power swept every spring. So it can continue to grow and continue to do its thing. And to clarify, because the question was raised, we have conflicting planting plans. We revised C6 to say that the planting plan, as shown on C5, is the planting plan.
Can I just make a suggestion? If we go back to the site composite plan first,
Mhm.
if you can go back to see, keep going backwards, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. This one, right here, C1. All right, this will clarify some things here, these are the notes on here, so. According to this. No, you gotta go back. So the bio retention area, you had it called up here, yeah.
Yeah.
So here.
I mean, it's-
Yeah, up there. This is the wetland replication area up here.
That's correct. That circle is indicating where it is, yeah.
Yeah, and then the bioretention, and then, these were defined as,
That's the buffer zone enhancement area.
and then this piece here,
Is the native grass area was the wild,
Mitigated.
yeah, right.
mitigating the two areas that used to. be
Right,
that
to
were
the new locations for
the
that
wild
original,
spot.
yeah,
That's now here,
that's correct.
and then this right here is,
Is a riverfront replication area of litigation for
right,
the conservation commission.
so the bioretention area is basically this up here.
Is that teardrop area up there? Yeah.
Okay, so just to be clear,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
So now if we go back to C5. I mean, are you sharing those in?
That's C6 and it's the planting design is shown on C5. list is on C6.
We can check with Andrew. Andrew, can you see the plans on the screen?
No,
I get share.
right here.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Just share screen. You don't need your video.
There you go.
Okay, so we're back to sheet.
Can you see it now, Andrew, Mr. Mills?
Yes,
Okay. But you haven't seen me. point. You can only see the screen. The plans, it's funny. There's some restrictions. So back to number 13. Other, part C was the replacement of the wetland replication plantings, having to have, because of the septic system construction. that was
Right, that's
conservation.
right.
Yeah, and so Attorney Pizzoni had a comment as well. He felt that that last sentence of that condition should be removed, but I just pointed out, same thing.
Yeah.
It was in the order conditions for the notice of intent filing. So it's okay to leave that in there.
We agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So then 14 is the next condition, and that we're going to, oh, yes, it's up to me.
Are you talking about what's on the plan related, you're just looking at C5? Are you talking about what's on the plan related to this area?
We're discussing condition 13.
About fire retention area?
Yeah, not.
So if you want to talk about what's on the plan about that? That might
We will go to
weigh
that
into-
next.
Yeah, I think we're going to go through the conditions and then go to the plan, because I have questions.
On the plan, okay.
Okay. Do you have anything on the condition,
No, just
number
the-
13? Okay.
Okay, number skip.
Just the language on the plan, which is.
So number 15,
Number 15 is standard language.
Yeah, 15 through 20, we don't have any problems with those.
The major site plan approval decision will be recorded. Number 17, the special permit for lower impact decision will be recorded. I just want to point out that the registry, we found that the registry is amenable to if you add an exhibit to the lid decision and attach the 8.5 by 11 set of plans
Yeah.
there. That way someone can always come back to planning and see the full size set, because we keep a full set.
You and I went through this. Sometimes there's a clerk there that doesn't accept it,
Right.
but we have to get through that clerk sometimes. so.
It all depends on how it's presented, if it's on Mylar and whatever, you can scan it, if you bring in the paper copy, they can, they're very quick getting it. Number 18 is pre-construction meeting, standard, and notifying us 14 days in advance with a schedule and anticipated start date. Number 19, copy of the final updated SWIP stamped by a professional engineer and signed by the owner must be filed with the planning board and may require Fuss and O'Neill to review it prior to the planning board accepting that. And then number 20 is after construction is complete, building expansion of the building, so 2 copies and a PDF of the complete as-built plans for the entire site. Plan approval features, so not just the outline of the paving
Right.
and surface elevations, but we want rim and invert and
Full blown.
pipe slopes and landscaping, any lighting, and that is to include, as mentioned in a previous condition, the entire site, because we need a full as-built based on what happened in 2017 and the modification of 2019. So that condition is meant to encompass all
Right.
that.
So that's the full blown after the expansion project, but after the repair work, there's one also.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And
If you
after the wall, so.
recall back at the
Oh,
beginning.
For the wall, oh, yeah.
Yeah, just want to make sure we reference that right. If you look back at
It was early on, right? Yeah.
Condition number 6,
Yeah.
paragraph 3. The planning board shall be provided 2 copies and a PDF of an updated as-built plan of these required repairs prepared and stamped by a professional land surveyor and stamped by a PE. So there's no confusion that a surveyor was consulted
Mhm.
to locate the information. Along with the certification letter stamped by applicant's professional engineering consultant, professional engineer, and that the repairs have been constructed in accordance with the approved plan to be reviewed by the town's engineering consultant and accepted by the planning board. So when you submit those, count time in that it's gonna go to Fuss and O'Neill for review, and then approval that the planning board signs off on. At a, almost like a discussion item on the agenda. And accepted by the plan prior to commencement of the construction of the building expansion. Right? So you have to prove to the planning board that those fixes were made. And expansion of the stormwater management system. You kind of have to, because you can't expand the drainage if the drainage, initial drainage.
Oh, no, that has to be, the work has to be done and satisfactory. It's just the, you know, the, all the extended approvals and such. I was just noting that it's, that making sure that we're aware it's gonna take some time,
We try to expedite the engineering consultant.
of course.
Those smaller types of reviews happen much more quickly.
And I think Amy is very familiar with them, so.
So is the board okay with 13 and then 15 to 20?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone in the audience, anything on those conditions? So. On from the conditions onto the plans.
Is there any difference?
The live decision's the same, isn't it?
The conditions are all the same. The front end of the document's a little bit different because the approval criteria is different. But the documents submitted are the same, which I might update with a few items that's been submitted since.
Yeah.
to the end of the meeting. The findings are the same. And just the specific language to the bid when you say it's approved according to this code.
Conditions.
1 through 20.
So does the board have any questions on the plans that were submitted on Thursday? Mr. Mills?
No question.
Question.
I have questions.
Mhm.
So C5 and C6, I'm trying to get my
Mhm.
head wrapped around this. So why, if the landscaping is going to be planted as in C5, why is C6 there?
We could have eliminated that, I guess, we could have eliminated the planting there, but it's what the wetland scientist is using to sort of keep track of his numbers, I guess, because he's familiar with it. We just said, look, this is how we want to plant it. Don't want it just haphazard like that, and we'll concentrate in the center. So C5 supersedes that. And there's a note on the plan that says that. It's also helpful because you can, in that plan, you get to see a little bit larger circumstance of what's there and the existing that is there. So.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Why not make them the same?
We wanted to turn this thing over real quick is what we want to do. But we could make them the same. Be happy to do that. Be happy to make that change. It looks like we've got a little bit of time here, and we could just make them the same. Get rid of one. That would be happy. That make everybody, if no one, if it's we just simply would put a note on here that says that this is superseded by 5. That shows it within the context. So we'd be happy to do that.
Just makes it easier to not have.
All right, that's fine. And that's fine. I understand.
So we're gonna change it, and eliminate C6.
I think that it's better to move the plants from 5 to 6 where it's larger. You can see it
Yeah.
better.
On C2, there's a temporary nursery stock that's going to be held.
C2.
It's right to the west of where the addition is going. Will they be safe there? It's within the limit of work.
That one escaped us. I'm sorry, Mimi, where is that?
It's right to just west of the south side of the addition.
Just west of the south side. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I think that that arrow, the pointer could have been better located, but it's just off to the side of to the west of the addition is where we want it, just a little bit further. There you go. See that dot's right at the corner of the existing
Yeah.
building. It's just it's poor placement of that. That could have been placed better.
I'm thinking if there's.
Yeah, I
a
think
bunch
so.
of nursery stuff
Sure,
there,
I
it's gonna
think
get
you're right.
thrown
And
over.
I think if we should just have it go down into more in front of the building, in front of the existing building.
So this is what you're talking about,
Yeah, that leader right,
Is it
that leader
temporary?
right there. Yeah,
a
It should-
temporary holding area for the planting.
yeah, it should be further west. It should be more in front of this.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's
yeah,
out of their
I agree with that. Yeah,
construction zone.
that's something we probably should have picked up.
And I think there's an error on the plans when you refer to the seed mix, you have New England plants incorporated. I think it's New England wetlands plants
It's New
incorporated.
England Wetlands Plants Incorporated.
So that's anytime you refer to the seed, it's contagious. It's-
But I also think we might have some input on that too. So
Yeah, and I would, and it says or equivalent. I would remove the equivalent. Who's going to decide what the equivalent is?
I know we say New England Wetland Plants someplace in there. I think. I know we would get that. Thank you. We'll make that change. Changes.
And then there's, where is that?
You can open this, we do.
Oh,
Like a newspaper on the subway.
and there's a paved apron for construction. It's,
Yeah, at the corner, around that northeast corner.
yeah, on where the wildflower meadows.
Well, we want that temporarily because we think there's going to be a lot of, around that corner during the period of when the superstructure is up. And before we get to the finished landscape, where there'll be a lot of truck activity around that corner, we want it to stay stable. So that will then get removed for the permanent landscape and the emergency drive that end up going around that corner of the building. But
Is this what you're talking about?
it's on the erosion, it's on C4. Go to that, Colleen, whoever's driving. If you never get that straight, who's trying.
Okay, we're on C4.
And C4 up at, you can see the crosshatched area right there. Right there, if you could imagine the superimposed, the building being superimposed on that, the northeast corner of the addition is right about just to the west of that area. And once the superstructure is up, there's going to be truck activity that's going to be going through there, and that's going to be one area where it's going to be just so close, very close to the wetlands. We want it to be stable, so it's a temporary paved area as opposed to just putting gravel there, which
So,
moves around quite a bit.
so you'll be able to grow things there after the, whatever's in the pavement has leached into the soil?
The- It's a coarse textured bituminous pavement. And I don't think it doesn't have any necessarily very bad contaminants within it that would permanently affect the growth of anything around it, just like all the other pavements on the property.
And you have
So,
6 inches of stone.
yeah, it's just gonna be, and it's a temporary it's probably only gonna be really necessary during a mud, if we're in construction during a mud season, so to speak, or during a wet season. We wanna make sure that where a lot of truck activity there is stabilized. And it's gonna be set up so it can easily be removed. Just to keep from tire ruts and mud and around that corner where there'll be a lot of truck activity.
And there's a
I had to
note,
fight for that, so. I thought it was gonna be really important for us.
there's a note on C5 about dead and marginally healthy trees to be replanted. Those aren't being replanted, I hope.
No, we don't replant dead plants, no. Maybe there's a run-on sentence there, maybe there's punctuation missing. Which one of dead and marginally healthy trees and shrubs in this area are unsuccessful native non-invasive plantings from prior projects which require replant, like I think it's badly written. But the idea there is that the area will be replanted.
Okay, but not with dead trees.
No dead trees, nor marginally healthy ones.
Can you buy them? I know you can get.
I know where you can get some.
Great deal.
I do know where you can get some on Turnpike Road. You want some.
Oh, and then I would recommend a note on I guess C5, which would be the landscape plan.
With the board's approval, I think, not that maybe I don't need it, we'll reword that note so it makes more sense there also. I'm sorry, maybe.
Typically, we have on landscape plans that all landscaping shall be planted in accordance with the approved plans. And any changes require town planner approval.
I think we have that condition in the, I think we have that condition in
Usually it's
the,
on the,
we can
we
put it
have
on
it
the
on the
plans
plan.
too. The landscape contractor really doesn't care, but I think it's really important that the owner needs to meet that requirement.
Just make sure.
So those are my landscape questions.
It's like, where do you stop?
Number 8.
Where do you stop putting conditions on the plan? I guess is
Well, we
one thing.
usually put them on the plans. On the landscape plan.
Yeah, there's usually a note on the landscape plan, just so that the contractor understands.
All right. So we'll take that condition and we'll turn it into a note. The landscape plan.
And I have one final question. Is there a full-time night supervisor there? There is. And so they're supposed to be mitigating the noise or making sure the noise. What do they do at night to make sure that?
We have people, we eliminated any kind of traffic and parking refrigerated units on the back side of
Okay,
the loading dock area. And we make sure that everything is on the front side, which is the.
Ask a question.
sure.
I didn't understand what you decided to do with C5 and C6. Are we eliminating 6?
No, we really need C6.
Okay.
If we're going to consolidate it to one, as was mentioned, either should match. Trying to make them match exactly is really the wrong way to go. Just put it on. Okay. Yeah, we still will have C5.
Still have C.
Yeah, because there are other things covered on it that
Right,
aren't
you
covered.
need,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but all the bioretention information is going to be on C6, period.
Is that what you were looking for?
So there's one landscape plan, that's all. For simplicity, that they're not two different
there's one landscape plan, a planting plan, excuse me.
For the bioretention area.
That's correct. Okay, now I
Just one
understand.
for the
There's just one for the
bioretention
bioretention area, and that will be on the C6 plan.
That's what I meant when I said.
I understand. I understood.
Yeah,
Okay, all right. As long as
I
we all
just,
understand.
we just,
right. Is the board all set? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission. And the first thing I wanted to say was,
Could you come closer, Freddie, so we can see you and hear you? Be careful with your purse. Be careful with your purse.
Here, my chair.
So first I want to say that on C5, the A through I is a great improvement. And
those are the areas we had talked about,
It
right?
is.
I just want to make sure.
But calling them out like that makes it really clear, and I think it worked really well. So
And actually, when we're doing the work, we can always say, oh, A is done, B is done, whatever.
But I think that works. The only question I had on that, which we didn't discuss on the exact planting, which you can figure out later, was a lawn alternative, is that lawn alternatives don't work if you mow them like a lawn. So I don't know if we need to say that anywhere or not. So you could plant, say blue stem grass, and then somebody come and mow it every week, and it's just stubble, and it's not. They need to be managed, and you will be picking the plants based on how you want it to look and to be managed, but it needs to be managed for the plants you use.
Right, you had some recommendations, right, for that?
Did. And that was the other thing, we were going to meet after the last meeting, and that didn't happen, so to go over some of the plants. And we weren't sure if you were going to sign off on it today, or if you're moving to the 27th or the 20th.
If I may, Chair, if you could get those to us quickly, we could get this set of plans turned around and well in advance. I'd like to get it done well in advance of the 27th.
Yeah, and what I was going to suggest, and I don't know if you need for me to meet with you or with the wetland scientist, plant expert.
Not for
because-
that, not for this area, not through A through I. We
Not
don't.
for A through I.
That's
I haven't
correct.
finished.
Okay,
So,
but
next-
it'd be good if we check off one at a time.
okay, A through I, we can meet and talk about that quickly.
Okay.
And that, then I wanted to talk about, I think it's on. C6. We have new shrubs under proposed plantings for bioretention,
Mhm,
36
mhm,
listed.
mhm.
New shrubs printed N equals 63. Now, I will happily take the 63.
No, I don't know what that is
I
actually.
think it's a transposed
It's
number.
definitely a number somehow, I don't know what is it.
It's the opposite.
AutoCAD escaped it
It's
somehow.
the opposite of 36 is 63.
Yeah, and the same thing though, when you look at, but you know what, I think I think that's the wetland scientist code for something. They were trying to figure out some multiplier for their own notes or something.
I
You
don't
know,
think his,
you know,
I don't
if you
think his
notice,
multiplier should be on your plans because
I-
I'm looking for 63 shrubs because it says. N
yeah, but you
equals-
know, there's a column that says number, right?
Okay, I get it. I'm just saying, I was looking for 63
If you see the water
shrubs.
plants also says N equals 100 something there. See that also? Right here. Right there, right there.
Well, N equals
That
100, they have
actually does
100.
add up.
Yeah.
I counted, they have
Yeah.
100.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, figure it out, but
Yeah,
maybe there's another, whatever the
it's
difference.
gonna be
between
pretty easy to
63
do. We're
and
gonna take that off
36.
there. So you wanted that on there, but you take it off.
Well, the other ones, they all add up. N equals 7, there's 7 trees.
Yeah. I think
So-
they might be counting existing also.
Anyhow, the next area is, so just for the planning board's knowledge, that the Open Space Commission first met with both Scott and
Bill,
Bill. I wasn't sure if it's William or Bill. I call him Bill.
we'll take Bill.
I I think it was October 21st at our meeting. And at that time, we talked about the fact that if there was any shrubs or trees, because we were talking about the meadow, any shrubs or trees were going to be added, that we would like them to be from Dr. Jagir's list for at-risk plants. At the meeting, I think it was 2 meetings ago, forget the exact date. I asked and I was told there's a lot. Well, let's go to this week, we're gonna have to sit down and discuss, I hope. The planting list for the 12,500 square feet of riverfront restoration area. I think that's on 7.1. I mean, C 7.1. There's, counted them somewhere. There's a lot of plants there, and there's not one. 188 shrubs, not one is from Dr. Jagir's list. And additionally, the meadowsweet is not a native variety.
This is the design from the wetland scientist for that area that was presented and approved by the Conservation Commission. There are wetland functions here that the wetland biologist is trying to accomplish.
And I'm going to suggest that the wetland biologist can meet those functions using plants on Dr. Jagir's list, just because Framingham hands that list out to all applicants that go in front of their Concom. I talked with Melissa, she's been handing it out to applicants.
Okay,
So you're going to find it, she doesn't have a problem with any of.
that was my
any of
next
the
question.
plants.
That was my next question.
I've
Yeah,
talked with her.
Great.
That list is being handed out across the state, but specifically, I don't know why you didn't get it from her, but also we had talked about it ahead of time, but I don't think if they're aware, because they're not looking at plants the way the Open Space Commission does. Meadowsweet's not native, this meadowsweet is a variety not native to New England. So
All right.
right there.
May I suggest, Freddie, if I could, through you, Chair, that we do have that meeting. We have it very soon with the folks from Goddard, you and I, and perhaps even Melissa. And it could even be a call on the phones, make it
Zoom.
easier for everybody, because everybody's all over the face of the earth these days. That we talk about that, and we go to this instead of taking the planning board's time.
Yeah, I don't want to spend, we did a lot last time, but that's a big deal. There's other, just so you know, there's other concerns about flowering times. You have nothing flowering the spring.
Mhm.
The next generation of these is dead, and you have nothing.
I suppose you have the same comment for the buffer zone area also.
Well, I couldn't find a plant list for this, the 7,700 square feet of enhanced buffer zone
That's the,
on C7.2, C7.1. I can't find it. So
this is this same plant list for both areas.
doesn't say that. This says 12,500.
No, it says, it's the same plant list for both areas here. It says riverfront and buffer zone for both restoration plantings. So anyway, so you're saying that we're gonna make, okay,
So that's for. Okay. It doesn't, so if you look at the plan, I'm just going to say you have plants in the riverfront zone, but no plants in the enhanced buffer zone.
that plant list is for both areas. But it's titled for both areas. Again, this is something that we don't need to.
Okay, I'm just looking at the plan. If you can show me that those plants are held out on both, I'll be happy.
If you look at C7.2, Freddie, it says it's pulled to the facilities. It says the 7,700 square foot buffer zone. And then you go back to the.
Let me see.
The plant list on C7.1 is for both of those areas.
Okay, I'll believe you and we can talk about it. And if it's not, we can come up with what it is. But the other thing is, unless I'm mixing up all these different plans,
Yeah.
all these
You
dates
should be
for
able to-
different dates.
You should be able to tell, all of the current plans have the date of 27, May 27th, okay? So,
Do
I mean,
they?
yeah, all the current ones, the most
Oh, I'm
current ones.
looking
will-
down here.
No, this is called a revision, a block table right
Not a
there.
plan, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That always has like the earliest date,
Okay,
earliest dates there.
all right.
So let's get that meeting.
So if we can meet
Yeah.
together with Goddard and
Thank you.
Melissa and you, and we can come up with the,
Yeah.
getting some of those plans in. Thank you. But thank you for these.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for your input. Appreciate it. Glad it worked out with Melissa too.
And just, no, but I'll just let you know why this is important. It's a species of bee that has disappeared across the state. No one was seeing it this year. And it just showed up at Breakneck Hill because of the planting we do.
Oh, that's,
So this isn't just, I just want to make a point. We don't say plant natives just to plant natives. We say plant natives because they have a function in the ecosystem, and the plant this we're using is proven to work. So it's very exciting.
thank you. Usually I'll grab that. The extension request.
So they need to continue. and also request that. They have to sign it first.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
requesting.
thanks, thank you.
Push that to the Friday, July 1st. Yeah.
Okay, so we're all set with the plans. We're all set with the decision and the conditions except for 14. Okay,
Well, hopefully the noise scientists can talk in the next few weeks.
I'm
Thank you.
getting an education. I can tell you, but yeah, no, we need to let the experts tell us it's gonna work. You know?
How far apart are you? Like, you like,
Well, their
50-50.
expert didn't have the new data that we had that was real time. So this really puts it more in perspective on where the wall probably should be located. And depending on how the wall is fabricated, you know, the sound retardedness, how it holds it. You know, we're gonna need a little curve at one end or, you know, a couple more feet, you know, making it an L to make it work more properly. Those are the types of things they're gonna do. We're gonna go out, it's my understanding, they'll place receptors to pick up the noise in 3 or 4 locations off the parking lot in the woods to be able to pick that up, and at a few homes if they want us to, so we can figure out if they're hearing anything up there. And,
will
you
this
know, we're
include
gonna,
nighttime?
yeah, we're gonna try to do it at the busy time, or the time when they would hear it, when there isn't other traffic
But
outside.
this would also pick up any noise related to nighttime loading,
Yeah, yeah,
right? So you're actually gonna consider that
It's-
nighttime loading traffic, even if it turns out it's minimal, that you can demonstrate that it is, right?
yeah, I mean, it's gonna be similar
So
to,
you're considering both.
We do it all.
yeah,
Simulate it all.
Yeah,
it's gonna,
because
it'll
that
end up,
goes to address all the.
it'll end up kind of like with a graph like this that's in our handout that we already gave you. That basically shows no trucks, no movement, nothing on site, trucks moving, refrigeration units, you know, so they'll be able to track all of that. And, you know, they're gonna be picking up all different sounds. So, you know, or not picking them up if they don't. So, you know, we're hopeful, you know, this Ken's, you know, they want doing this, but they want to spend the money to make sure it's gonna work. Because it's a lot of money.
One more question, this concept that you brought, is this the one that's in the report?
It's
report?
similar to where it's in the report, but it was a little bit more refined, laid on, you know, what's in the ground and everything. Because we had to look at it quickly to see. We don't want to propose something we don't
But
think.
you're
we're
not
gonna
at a
do.
point where that could be like a 75% chance that's where it's going.
Well, that's if the other, you know, the butters expert and our expert
So you're
and Board of
still
Health
working-
agrees that that's where it should be. Yeah. I mean, we don't want to give you something that's going to confuse the issue if we don't end up going with that. Because they may say you need to build a wall and then you need to do plantings or you need to do this. There may be 2 or 3 components to the mitigation. You know, so we did that internally because we said if we're going to be drilling holes in in our parking lot, we need to know we're not gonna destroy the Coltech system that's underground. You know, because we've already approved that, it's built, it's there. So we're gonna make sure we can, you know, move the posts so we're not disrupting that. Because that's under your jurisdiction as well.
I guess I just want to be, just give a little guidance to the planning board, some opinion. I just hope that, there's a 3-week timeframe to this meeting. And it's my impression that town council is confirming on his response to you and the feedback of the planning board. And if you weigh the time to perhaps come up with a solution versus another meeting or whatever, I just want that to be clear that time is going by.
And I would just ask that you, or I'll even do it, try to find dates that town councils available. I have a pretty open schedule.
Yeah, that plan that you're tasking us to have a meeting, we'll get on that.
Yeah.
Right away.
Yeah, and just my final comment is my only concern is that it's kind of conflicting. I understand how clear he's been, but he's also rewritten the condition.
Right.
So that's a condition
Right.
versus writing it into the site plan approval. So that in and of itself is a conflict for me.
That's a good point.
We want to clear.
Yeah, if he's
Well,
saying he
he's
doesn't want it as a
saying- he's
condition,
saying two
but he's
things.
rewriting the condition.
Yes.
Right.
So it's just not clear, and that clarity would be helpful to have. Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So should I entertain a motion to? What are we doing? Extend the action deadline. Is
So
that-
moved.
He looks like a little,
To July 1st.
Andrew, you look like a drone.
To July 1st, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comment? All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
And then a motion to continue the hearing to June 27th, 2022 at 7:05.
For both the major site plan approval and the
And
lower
low
impact,
impact
and
development.
that extension was for both. of
Yeah,
those.
the extension.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. We extend the public hearing for 325 Turnpike Road, Kins Food Expansion Major Site Plan Approval and 325 Turnpike Road, Kins Food Expansion Special Permit for LID to 7:05 on June, what is it, 27th? At 7:05 PM
All
respectively.
right, second.
Very good. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Very good. Is that that? Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
We'll coordinate with town council.
Yeah, I expect to get a response from him from my last email. And because he said he was gonna tie it up, but, you know, hopefully we can pick some times. He and I are good. You know, go here most of the time. And the chair, we can coordinate with as well. And if I got a little short, I apologize. I'm a little tired tonight.
We're glad
Take care of
you're
that
home.
extent there, Bill. Relax.
Feel better.
Thank you.
Thanks to be short.
Yeah. Next time I'm wearing my shorts.
Hey.
Bermuda Reds, it's part of the uniform.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is 200 Turnpike Road. You going to rejoin us?
I was refused from this matter also because.
Oh,
I
okay.
hadn't considered for it.
Yeah.
Make a motion for a 2-minute recess.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
And yes,
Houlihan, yes.
So how are you feeling? Go ahead.
It's still recording.
Yes. How are you feeling, Andrew?
I'm feeling better. I went to my son's graduation on Tuesday.
Was that the super spreader event?
I think so, because Monday night, we went to a dinner and at one table, everyone got COVID. The table we were at, half the people get COVID, and the table we had drinks with afterwards, 70% of those people now have COVID. So pretty much was it. My mother-in-law has COVID. She only attended the graduation. My aunt has COVID. She only attended the graduation. So yeah, it was pretty much. So but it's just like a head. I just have like a head cold. I thought it was allergies at first, and it wasn't until one of the teachers from the high school texted me. He's like, "You might want to get tested." All of us at the table we had drinks with. I was like, okay. So
It is like a head cold. Just makes you a little tired.
Before you die.
Depends on how it hits you. But the influenza did that too, right?
You can stop sharing your screen.
Oh. This one, thank you. Or anything, did that good?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
I
is
missed that.
confusing.
Okay, yeah, so that was like my whole point, and then I'm like, maybe I never said that.
Yeah, in writing.
No, like, I got his point, but then he's rewriting the condition, so
Where are we going?
then why are you rewriting the condition? Anyway. If you can get that clarity. Are a little hard. Good luck.
Yes, the microphone is, everything's still recording. Just be- Not that we miss.
Legalese. Thank you for taking the recess. It's my 5th one today.
Oh my God.
It's so good. I'm trying really hard, but it causes a problem.
I never.
So did you drink all of this since you sat down tonight?
Yeah. You're supposed to check your skin. So it doesn't go back. Yeah, it's just-
Or it's really bad collagen.
No, I don't take it.
I think it's my geriatric condition. So are we back in session? Do we have to vote ourselves out of it?
I think you just go.
Ooh. The planning board is now back in session. So 200 Turnpike Road.
Would you like me to give you a quick update?
Sure.
So the last planning board public hearings for the major site plan and the low impact development was May 23rd, 2022, which was continued which was not attended by the applicant team, continued to June 6th, that's this evening. On June 3rd, we received an email from the applicant requesting to continue to the June 27th planning board meeting, that they would not be attending this evening. We have previously granted, the planning board previously granted an extension to the approval period to July 15th, 2022, so we don't need to extend, just vote to continue
Okay,
to June 26th
so
at this time.
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we can continue the public hearings for 200 Turnpike Road snow removal landscaping contractor facility major site plan approval, and for 200 Turnpike Road snow removal landscaping contractor facility special permit for LID, continue to June 27th, 2022 at 7:10 PM as requested by the applicant.
Second for discussion.
motion second, any discussion, Mr. Stein?
Karina, has there been any progress or any interaction between you and the proponent on this matter?
Not directly, but they did submit a notice of intent and a stormwater management permit with conservation. So they are currently, they had their initial public hearing opening with them, and I believe they requested a continuance from the second Conservation Commission public hearings. We've had email correspondence as to, their intent for this evening.
Did I hear the motion correct that it's to the 27th?
Yes,
Okay.
because initially we had it for June 20th, but they created a holiday. Determined the 20th was.
Okay. But do you expect to hear from them before the 27th?
We're
Okay.
optimistic. They've been notified that they need to supply plans in time for review.
They were, so the last Concom meeting was on Thursday, and they told, they weren't there, but they communicated to the Conservation Commission that they were updating the plans.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they had
Thank you.
several comments from conservation. I incorporated that. Okay.
Any more comments? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
And yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Very good. Now Debbie can come back. So the next item on the agenda is a discussion item, vote to recommend a planning board member to the Metro West Regional Collaborative.
Who was doing that before? Mimi.
Me.
Is that something you still want to do?
I'd be happy to. It's,
They typically meet once a month.
yeah, they typically meet once a month. It's been on Zoom since the pandemic, and it's the Metro West towns in under MAPC's umbrella. So it's interesting having conversations with people in different towns and what different towns are up to.
And it's usually a morning meeting.
Yeah. Yeah,
And there's a select
8:30
board
to,
appointment as well. That's a representative.
Is there anyone else interested in wanting to do that?
no.
Make a motion that Madam Chair continue to be the MWRC representative from the planning board.
Again?
Heard a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
And yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
And that will be a planning board recommendation to the select board to appoint.
Okay.
The next one is
Vote to recommend a planning board rep to MAPC, which is the overarching organization that MWRC follows. And evidently, all the member communities have an appointment, but Southborough has been vacant for a while. And MAPC reached out to the select board, I believe, and Andrew Dennington thought that that would be, it would be better to have a planning board rep on the planning commission than the select board.
You want that one?
What is the charter? Like, what's the requirements?
I don't have that detail. I believe it's probably very similar, like a monthly meeting. You get invites to all the other events like MBTA communities, discussion groups, grant programs that are coming up. They have a newsletter, monthly newsletter that lists all the events and all the hot topics. Like, for example, when the pandemic started, they provided a lot of feedback on how to handle open meeting law, things like that. Similar to 495 Metro West Partnership. They all kind of do the same thing. And the two newsletters, MWRC and the MAPC, mimic each other. So it's almost the same thing. But for some reason, they don't specify the region. Yeah, so that's- you know, they'll have discussions about ARPA and how other communities are handling what kind of recommendations, the projects they have, the whole gamut of what might affect the region. And it's the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. You know, there's the Central Mass Regional Planning, which we're really in Worcester County. But we fall under this one as well because we have very similar communities.
So if I don't know, like if it's an hour and a half in the morning, it's unlikely that I can attend, just due to my work schedule.
Yeah, I have some interest in it. I'm a new person on the committee, so I can fully represent the planning board, being new to the planning board, but I am interested. I've attended some of their sessions on MBTA communities to get up to speed, and I think I'm on the mailing list, so I kind of get the gist of what they're doing. But I'd be interested.
Make a motion that Mr. Miria be the representative from the planning board for the MAPC going forward.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No.
Thank you, Debbie. All in favor of Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
And yes,
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
The next, vote to recommend a planning board rep to the Shopsy Capital Subcommittee. And
I'll make a
that's
motion.
probably Jesse, isn't it?
that's
Make
correct.
a motion that Jesse Stein be the representative for the Shopsy Capital Subcommittee.
Second.
Yes.
For discussion, you want to continue with that? Jesse?
Yes, but I'll abstain from the vote,
Okay.
as I always have, just for consistency.
Any discussion? Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
And I believe that term will be Shropsy this morning. I believe they're going to reestablish that committee for 6 months, not a full year. So we might write that your term will be,
I'm amenable to whatever extension of the select board.
because we write the
Seems
notice to
fair.
the select board.
I know that that's in flux, and I'm willing to accept whatever the term is.
Hey, Karina,
That's
I noticed that the CPC appointment's not on there. Is that just not due yet, or did that get missed?
No, that doesn't expire till 2024.
Okay,
June 30th, yeah.
so
Only the
just
one-
for the record, I'm still the appointee for the planning board to the CPC because I'm still the acting chair.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
The next discussion item, planning board vote on appointments to deed research subcommittee.
So Freddie's- So, it's my understanding that this committee is still established, but I'm not sure it was picked up in the notice that we sent last year, because we said appoint 3 members to the deed research committee, which will dissolve when the planning board chooses, but when I went to look at the charge on the website, it still said, June 2016 was the charge, so we want to clarify that. So just to make sure, if the planning board could vote to reestablish the subcommittee, the deed research database subcommittee. And the reasons are that we want to work on some initiatives to update the data research, deed research database, which, as you recall, had all the open space that were parts of subdivisions from, I think, the early 80s to 2015. And since 2015, we've had several projects that have open space included in them that's restricted. So maybe we come up with a plan and some bandwidth to hire a consultant to get that updated, which would require an attorney. Like Mass Audubon did, they had Mass Audubon did research, and then they had an attorney that did the deed research. And it's a great database. We use it a lot. We use it for the open space inspections. It's not, open for everybody to access, but we want to, we tap into it for a lot of information. We want to update it. Also, just a quick update. Mass Audubon had originally developed that deed research database on a Google Drive, but they used their account, right? So when Google Drive made some updates since 2014, 15, when they worked on it, it started restricting some things. So we asked IT to create a town Google Drive. And then we asked Jeff Collins, who still works at Mass Audubon, and Hannah Lyons, I don't know, I can't remember, Lyons Giles was her last name, who was working there at the time, had it set up under her Gmail account. And come to find out, you have to take every single file and folder and transfer ownership to the new Gmail email. So we're in the process of doing that. And once we have all the files transferred over, which is they send them, we log in, we accept them, and then it becomes our ownership. Then the next step would be to have IT download all the files to the server. So we're off Google Drive. And then we don't have to be dependent on it. So first things first, we do that. But then once we get that in order, we want to work on getting that updated before it gets too out.
So I was certainly going to do, would you like to replace me on that?
On the deeds research? Sure.
We're not super active right now, so it's not super taxing, but should we need to get some information or pass something by, we just need a team ready to meet and vote.
So my recollection was the membership was Mimi Latrell, Freddie Gillespie, and myself,
Correct.
and I will be stepping aside and Marty Land will take my place.
And it's a one-year term. And we just have to ask Freddie if she's willing to rejoin. I believe she is. And Mimi, if you're willing to stay on. We'll keep you updated on things. We just need a committee there.
Well, we also have to take action on reopening it. Is that what you said? Like
Yeah, just reestablish.
reestablish.
So motion to, and Andrew's still there too.
So move.
Seconded.
To reestablish the committee. Motion and
We did.
second.
Reestablish.
Reestablish the deed research database subcommittee
Any discussion?
to be dissolved when the planning board will dissolve. So there's no end point. We just want to confirm that. When we're ready, the planning board will then dissolve.
All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
Nine, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demirian, yes.
Okay, and now the membership, Frederica Gillespie. You still, we were going to.
That's usually what-
Calling
yeah.
her to get you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll be on.
You're interested?
I'm interested. Am I representing somebody? Because if I am, I need to have that commission vote.
No, you're as an individual with your expertise from your committees, but you, as you. And we had to reestablish the committee just to make sure, the subcommittee, that we have everything in order.
So if I'm not representing anyone,
Okay, we'll double check the chart, but I think it's straightforward. We need a motion for Freddie.
So a motion to appoint
Marnie,
Marnie Houlihan, Mimi Latrell, and Patricia Gillespie to the
There's a power.
deed research subcommittee.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
And yes,
Houlihan, yes.
Mary, yes.
And on to tree protection bylaw and scenic roads and public shade trees.
we already dissolved the master plan initially at the
Yes.
beginning of the meeting.
Yeah. Sure.
So in our last meeting, I volunteered to take over the former chairman, Don Morris's scenic road and connect with the Historic Society, Kevin Miller, Historic Commission, sorry, Kevin Miller, and then to reach out to Melissa Danza on conservation. So as I explained to those individuals, was crazy busy. And this is the week that I'm going to be reaching out to establish some time so we can kind of hopefully present as a 3 commission / committee group that we have a complete buy-in from our committees as we take it to the scenic roads, as well as taking in the public feedback that we received. So that's my update on the scenic road.
And on tree protection, last week I met with, well, first, last Tuesday, I attended, as did Marnie and Debbie, the tree hearings before the select board. And there was discussion about the tree warden and this new development that there was a special act that created, and Debbie knows more about this than I do, so fill in if I get this wrong, that created the DPW. They disbanded separate departments and put them all under the DPW. In that act, dissolved the tree warden and named the select board the tree wardens. So there's confusion there on how that will work.
I'll just add that I had been looking at that for just trying to understand the Public Works Planning Board, which was formed at the same time. So that, just a little bit of history, that was a ballot initiative, and that passed in 1991 and went to the 1991 state legislature for enactment. And so the wording that's in the state legislature is what the town voted on. And I had never noticed that before, actually. This was like 5 different sections or so. But yeah, it's when the highway department, tree, sanitary, other water, all, they technically dissolved and they were consolidated into the DPW. And at the same time, the Public Works Planning Board was formed as an oversight committee for the DPW. You know, it's kind of incredible that we hadn't realized that, and maybe DPW hasn't realized that either. So it's interesting to go back and take a look at that wording. But what does that mean for
And Debbie,
us?
just one clarification though, they weren't an oversight, I think they were advisory.
Advisory, right? Advisory, that's right.
Advisory to the select board on
On the
DPW.
DPW.
They're an advisor to select. board.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Thank you, yeah. So, can I, Mimi, has there been any other discussion about what that means? You know, what do we do about the present situation where we have somebody named as a tree warden? We've been talking a lot about tree warden. What does that mean?
So, last Wednesday, I guess, I met with Karen Galligan, Chris Leroy, and Lisa Brascio at the DPW to discuss process. And Lisa said she was going to reach out to town council and get more clarity on what this actually means and the ramifications of it. The positive thing was that Karen Galligan and Chris Leroy indicated that they would really appreciate a process to work from. So that's good. One glaring issue is that there's no way to determine what the right of way is on a lot of the older roads. Our GIS hasn't been updated since 2002, I think. And the older roads, there aren't road layout plans for those roads. So any of the newer ones and all the subdivision plans are fine, but the older ones is a question. So my question was, what do other towns do? Other towns have older roads, and how do they figure out what the right of way is? Karen and Lisa were going to look into that. But Lisa's on vacation this week, so.
And the only way to get that map is up to DPW, right? These are those big table-sized maps for the rights of for all the street maps and everything with the right of way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wanted to find out if they could be scanned or be
It may already be.
It really?
We could ask Karen if they've already scanned them. If they do have a scan. Might have.
Nice.
But what are those? Those are the approved as-built road plans, or are those something different?
Road acceptances.
They're probably the road acceptances of combination road. Like the state has county roadway layouts that a lot of surveyors have on. It's like a traditional way of keeping. Road counties. They're probably roadway acceptance plans. of that nature. I probably have to go down and take a look at them myself. Get a better understanding.
So how do we figure out the right of way? It's like, that's one of the points that's really confusing for people to understand is that they have their yard and they think that the land is theirs, but there's this right of way that is really public property. And this is where we're talking about scenic roads and stone walls and trees. And it adds to a layer of confusion if even we don't know what the public way is. How is a homeowner supposed to know? How is a tree warden supposed to know? How is the planning board supposed to know? So what is the solution to it?
Isn't it the first 3 feet?
No,
so
the street layout is basically in the street acceptances, it's laid out as either 50 feet or 40 feet. And there's a profile that's in there, and that's what you go by, whether they build out, they don't build it out perfectly, where it's 3 feet on each side. Do you know what I mean? So you go by the balance of the properties too, as you go along.
So I
actually
was gonna
a
say
surveyor can
property
find it.
balance.
well, we've had our lot surveyed, so I know where the layout is in front of ours, and it's like 2 feet in one area, and then it goes up to 5.
Yeah.
And then when it goes around the corner, it's a more consistent one.
Well, the solution might be to simplify the tree protection so that it's, I mean, is it ever less than the first 3 feet?
Yeah.
It is in some
In
cases?
some cases, it's all on one side. You know,
Just
We paved down.
So if there are stone walls, those are almost always in the.
yeah, and mostly,
right
you're gonna- mostly you're gonna see them on the old roads.
Right.
Because those are the ones that are in the parks, and that's where you have your scenic roads.
When you purchase a property, and you have a mortgage, so you have a plot plan that's required as part of the mortgage. Those plot plans are usually instrument surveys, locating pins and corners of the property. And most people aren't super aware of it, but there's a record of that. So, for example, when someone comes in and requests a tree removal, removal on scenic road. We asked them to they have to provide a plan, and so they'll provide something stamped by a surveyor or an engineer showing a stone wall somewhere, it's supposed kind of right. So what we've been doing is, if they're saying it's on private property and not straddle, we have them submit a letter from the surveyor. Because he goes out and verifies, is the stone wall touching the town line or their front property line? And they should know where their front property line is. There's probably instances that don't.
And that's far cheaper to get than a loan survey.
Yeah, and usually it's, a developer who wants to cut a driveway. When it comes to the trees, it's similar. They can determine if the trees are there based on the private property line, where there should be evidence that a surveyor can locate, at least to see if it's close or not. If it's 10 feet away, then it's a no-brainer. It's close to a straddle.
But going back to Mrs. Demuria's point, it does seem a little bit cumbersome to me to have to reference plot plans every time one of these matters comes up to determine the right of way.
What
So-
else would you like?
Well, that's the problem though. Is how are we gonna get something passed at town meeting if it's, terribly cumbersome and complicated? And that's why this whole thing is back
Well, right away is
on
kind
that
of
drawing
a
board.
standard industry term, and MGL references right away. The Mass General Law references it. Well, granted, it's not real clear how they wrote that general law. The town right away is town right away. It's like it's a standard. Where it is exactly, it can vary. There's probably areas where it is missing, but for the most part, I think there's information, whether it's from the public side or from a private entity who has their deed, because a deed has a deed description, which defines their property.
Some of them now have GPS locations. They're written right into the deed. It can make it easier for other people.
So do other towns have rights of way, so it sounds like we have these right of ways that are on a map. Maybe they're not updated, or
They
But
were-
There's probably not accurate.
they may not be accurate.
I guess
what
the
do other
older
towns-
roads, there aren't maps.
Are not maps. So, I had another question though. Recently on Flag Road, I noticed there was a right of way that had some trees that were removed, and DPW paved the right of way. And that's a different matter, is the right of way protected, can't be paved? So, it came up and I thought, well, I'd like to know what's the right of way, because maybe it was the person's property, even though there was a tree there that had been removed. So it would be nice, it would be convenient if we could easily check a map and say, oh, okay, that wasn't the right of way, they're just paving the road.
It will
supposedly
never be easy because it's old information, like
Yeah.
information that's carried to the registry of deeds and surveys and A&Rs and subdivision
It's
laws.
also something you can collect. If you start going back to road acceptances, you can at least find out that, say Flag Road was a old county road, which are all 50 feet. That's huge. You know that. And if you can find your lot line, your pegs or something drill, whatever it is, at least a GPS thing. So once we find out how wide a road is, we can sort of track it. We can make sort of like a database that things come through, but you're gonna have to do more.
Which is the challenge on
It's the
town meeting
research.
required approval.
Mr. Lipp,
So, having spent many hours in dusty books and in registries, I can tell you that you're talking about a project. And sort of the simple answer is that your the deed for every property adjoining the road specifies bounds of property. You have to go find real holes in stone walls and bounds and all of that. That's from that. Typically, the banks want a plot plan, but the plot plan isn't the official description of where the boundaries are. The plot plan is something that's convenient for the bank to look at. Ownership is determined by the deed. Now, in terms of what the road is what isn't deeded to you. That's part one. Part two is that the road doesn't necessarily go down the center of the right of way. It goes wherever, the pavers found it convenient, because just like the cows in Boston, we've got roads that move, 7 feet over here because the cows used to stumble on the rock and they wore the path that way. The other thing that comes up is that it's not unknown for the town to be granted an easement for a road when you have to do things around. That sort of, two things can happen when the town needs to widen a road or realign a road. One is that property can be taken and either sold or taken by eminent domain in order to adjustments, and that should be reflected in the registry. But that can happen after you bought the property. The other case is that you need an easement because it's in your interest to get a sidewalk or to get the road straightened or whatever it is you want. So the shorter form of this is it's complicated, it's messy, there isn't a single answer. And oh, by the way, whatever documents you have in DPW are probably not precise enough to enter them into GPS with the accuracy you expect out of GPS. So as everyone here has been saying, you have to look at this sort of case by case. And if you want an answer, that's a 21st century answer that says, oh gosh, it's in a computer and everything is there, and you just, zoom in and you see where things are. You can do that, but it's not a cheap project. It's a big deal. That helps you to understand the situation. And I will preface this by saying I'm not an attorney. I'm just someone who's had to go research this kind of thing. But I have properties that, not here in town, but elsewhere, where literally the bounds are, we find this stone wall and we go, to where it bends, and you look for the rock that looks like this, and there's a drill hole. And then you go 3 chains from that.
That's about right.
I don't make this stuff up.
No.
No. So it's more like a point, like it's when something comes up, you hone in on that location and figure it out. As opposed to having a full set of perfect plans that, because the errors that were done and the errors that happen when you close lots geometrically, they don't always meet, and then that carries on, and then there's the curvature of the earth and all the stuff that goes into it. So it's not a perfect, it's not an absolute thing. So when you have a problem, you look at that lot and figure it out.
Yeah, I think, the flip side is, most of the times for the tree conservations, it's pretty obvious. Right? You may not have a plan that's you can stick a GPS receiver into and let it sit there for 24 hours and know that, within 5 centimeters, this is where you are. But I mean, if you look and see, there's a stone wall, there's pavement in between, there's a tree, most of the tree is in there. A reasonable person will say, this isn't town's right of way, town should deal with it. On the other hand, if it's sitting just on the other side of the stone wall, a reasonable person looking at this will say, gosh, it's private property. And I think there is a risk in trying to make things so precise that you have to spend a lot of money sorting out what reasonable person can come to just by looking. I'm an engineer who spent a fair amount of his time counting picoseconds and, you know, how many atoms you diffuse into a layer of silicon. It's kind of weird, you know, he's saying you don't need to be precise, but in this case, you really don't need to be precise.
So those are the challenges. And the plan is to continue to work on a process to bring to the select board and to the planning board. So at least we'll have a process. And I plan to reach out to other towns and ask for advice how they figure out their right of ways.
Or at least word it in the proposed bylaw so that it's palatable. Town meeting.
I mean, for a property owner, it's pretty straightforward. If you've got a property owner who's concerned about a tree, it's, you know, if the tree isn't on their land, consider it to be a public tree. And, you know, if their attorney, you know, when they did the research to, you know, purchase their property indicates that, you know, gosh, there's an easement, they need to understand that the easement makes it a piece of land and therefore a public tree. And I don't think you need to get more complicated than that. It's only if you want to, you know, solve the global problem, you know, what my friends at IBM used to call, you know, boiling the ocean.
But it depends on what the easement's for.
Right.
So if you have a drainage
Yes.
easement, it may not impact
Right.
town's
I'm
control.
talking about specifically an easement to the town for
Sidewalks.
anything.
And then the other issue in your in the bylaw is this, well, now this whole thing from 1991. So is there a path forward around, would that need to be rewritten if that select board is your, essentially your tree warden?
I thought when I read it recently that they could delegate.
They could designate.
I-
That's what
okay.
I thought too. Yeah,
I don't think
Delegate.
it says it in there, but I think that they can.
I read it somewhere too.
So that's not as big of
That
an
the
issue.
select board can have a designation.
And could they designate to a board if they decided to set up a tree board or a different option that has been kicked around? So that's, you know, you can't imagine, they're very busy, right? So you can't imagine that they're gonna want to do more of these tree hearings. So I was looking at that legislation too, to see what are the options, and I was wondering if they could set up a tree board and say, we designate this tree, all trees and matters around trees to the tree board. And maybe that legislation doesn't have to be changed. I think that would be a difficult procedure. It's not, you know, I think it has to go back to vote, yeah, not town meeting vote, a ballot to change it.
Oh, the chart.
I think
It's
so.
1991.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Consolidated, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I would agree.
And I think your bylaw can simply call the tree, say for the purposes of the bylaw, tree board is whoever has the function of tree board.
Right.
We can just not worry about it. And then it can be sorted out. However it's involved.
Also, Mimi had emailed us that the special town meeting, the select board voted to October 13th at 7 PM. Just so you know, so if we need to do anything, we'll work the clock back. When we can start. putting carries if we're ready.
Anything else on trees? Nope. So 154 Turnpike Road. I asked for this to be on the agenda. And back in 2019, the owner of that property came before us because they had carved a driveway between 144 and 154. And they came for a modification of the site plan to do that, and then decided to withdraw without prejudice and return the site to the approved plan conditions. And that was in 2019. They said that they would within a month. And town planner emailed Lori Lavoli a month later, and they hadn't done it. And
They were issued a letter from the building commissioner at the time, saying as long as they, I think the intent was as long as they were taking action forward to continue meeting compliance to fix things, that there wouldn't be a fine or something like that. She would work with them to move it. But that kind of.
yeah, so since then, the plans haven't been restored to the approved plans. That driveway they cut through, it appears that people are driving on it because in the spring it had all these tire marks. The Jersey barriers can be moved, and on top of that, they've removed all the landscaping. They've removed the landscaping all in the front of the buildings on Route 9, all along Breakneck Hill. And according to our bylaw, any reduction in landscaping requires a modification of the site plan.
So is this where Hula, with the restaurant there, Hula?
Hola.
Hola. Hola. No, it's H-O.
Hola.
Oh, it's Hola.
Hola.
I know that.
How's your Spanish?
I'm sorry. not very good. I couldn't even say Hula. Because they recently went to the select board for outdoor dining, which was very similar to the one before. And the planning board was in consensus at the time that in order to have businesses stay up and running, that it wasn't a problem. So we did the same thing again, but nothing had changed. So the planning signed off on it. I think I had sent it.
And I think Tomaso has outdoor dining too, which is right next door. to
As
Same
well.
plaza.
Yeah, so that was simply using spaces along the side of the building, making sure that any handicap spaces was available still somewhere else. I did talk to the building commissioner about traffic, the appearance of traffic still cutting across there. And when I went out there with the Jersey barriers, you could see the tire tracks, and I spoke to this tire track, she said, yeah, they were probably pushing the snow there and the tire track up against the Jersey barriers and we went to store it. Now, I'm not sure, I have to revisit the site plan if that's where the storage, snow storage was proposed or not. But I believe there's supposed to be a fence along that southern property.
And trees.
And trees, and there was a question on that.
Karina, isn't the curb supposed to be higher too?
Curb between, where the non-compliant driveway was.
Correct.
I have to look at the plan closely. I can't recall. They did put grass back there and I can't recall. I think, is there a picture of that?
I think there was supposed to be a fence that was supposed to
Yeah.
be extended.
Correct.
and
Fence-
everything.
These
But
are-
then the trees that got removed are all over, like they're across from, they're on the east side. There were like 4 trees that got taken down and removed, I think ground down. They're on the west side, like Mimi said, along Breakneck Hill. They ground down all the stumps, I think last weekend. And now it looks like they're gonna just seed it because they've leveled it all off. And then there are some trees even on the north side that face Route 9, they took out trees. So and then all the plantings right along Ola, all the way over to Tomaso on that west side, everything's gone.
And on the front facing Route 9 in front of Bin and whatever else is there. They had big planting areas there that are all gone. And when I was there last week, they had ladders up against the lights and the globes off the lights and wires hanging down. So they're doing something with the lighting too.
So the question is, we don't, we don't know their goal here, so we don't know if, are they refurbishing the landscaping to meet, but we do have an approved site plan set from 2003, I believe. and that was-
Which, just by the way, the landscaping never complied with that.
Was Capital Group informed of this agenda item?
No, this is just a discussion. right?
This was to bring it to the planning board's attention to determine if there was any recommendation or an action letter to the building commissioner, or I reach out to the Capital Group to find out what are you doing there, and then unless it's in writing.
What part is it? I don't see it.
That's 2019. It's 2022, they've
Oh,
written everything
See,
down.
see all in front of Bin Bin and in
The
front of,
shrubbery, so.
all of that's all gone.
Oh, okay.
So what
And
are they
those
doing?
trees
We
there.
don't know. It's just been observation. We've gotten a call and we've gotten planning board members drive by, because you go back and forth, you see it. So it's all of a sudden come to our attention. Also because we check on if the driveway was, closed off like it was supposed to. And they did do that, but they didn't put the rest of the landscaping fence and that. So just kind of want to know what direction you want us to write a letter. Or if you want us to first follow up with Capital Group and talk to the building commissioner. What kind of action would you like us to take? In a more formal sense. So that gets documented, and we start moving in the right direction. And code enforcement officer who writes the code and non-compliance, which it is, if they're not doing this. We could bring it to her attention and say, could you please find out what's going on?
Yeah, so we had done that before and they said they would be in compliance. And so there is a letter existing that they're supposed to be operating
Yeah.
against. So I guess my perspective is that there should be something more formalized saying we're checking on you and there appears to be no compliance with your agreement to come back to the original plans. Yeah.
So this came about as an agenda item because you personally saw these, that it was out of compliance on your own inspections? Or was the chief zoning code enforcement officer involved in this?
No, not at all. So Andrew had mentioned that the trees had come down. And then I drove over there, and in the meantime, I got other pictures from another resident on things going on there.
Well, to Marnie's point, we already had, if they're not complying with what they said they were going to do, that would be the building inspector, I would think.
So bring her attention back to that, emphasizing that they were already asked to comply and maybe need a stronger, maybe a fine or something if it's within her power to do.
Well, that's what was happening before, actually. If my memory serves me correctly, that came back for modification because they were being fined daily for being out of compliance with the first site plan. Right?
I don't know if they were actually fined, but they would be. I don't know if money actually. I can't keep, I don't know, that doesn't come from me, so I have to just ask Lori. if they were actually.
So Karina had checked when those tire marks were, and Lori said she'd get to it, but she's busy and it's way down. on
It's
her.
like February, it was February, March.
But so now it's way out of compliance.
Right, this is almost like we need to do a letter to the select board and bring all of this, including the fact that the building inspector didn't get to it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, Josie, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, we should probably try to work with the zoning enforcement officer first to see what they can do. I'd hate to go straight to the, let's be a good,
Well, right, but we did, and then nothing happened. That's the concern with going back to the same person that didn't do what was going to happen, right?
I understand. Personally, I just think it would be best if we go to the zoning enforcement officer first and say, hey, before we go to the select board, what is going on here? Because one, what we originally brought up never got brought back into compliance, and now there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening that brings it even further out of compliance. That'd be my approach.
Yeah, so that was kind of my thought, that hopefully a letter from the planning board instead of just Karina trying to call would spur the zoning code enforcement officer into action. And then I would think the next step would be to copy the select board. And Mr. Belmia, who wants to talk? Okay.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. Just listening in, it sounds like they're out of compliance. They're doing more stuff, which is continuing to keep them out of compliance. Would it maybe make sense, while things are in flux at the moment, is to reach out to the owner first and just say, hey, like, what are your plans here? Are you looking to bring this back into compliance? Rather than going to a zoning officer or going to the select board, maybe reaching out, being a good neighbor, reaching out to the owner themselves and just seeing what their plans are.
Well, Mr. Belniak, we had the proponent in here. If you recall, from the meetings that we had when they came in for the modification because they were out of compliance. So we did go through a lengthy process with the owner of the property. And they still, did not adhere to what was agreed on. So I feel like we actually did the correct, thing in partnership with Capital Group.
Oh, no doubt. Did you guys do the correct thing and say, hey, this is what needs to get done? And they didn't. I do not recall the prior meeting, so I don't have any of that context. And I apologize if missing that makes this comment completely errant. I was just thinking more like, I drove by a little while ago and saw a bunch of landscape ripped up. I didn't see the trees taken down, so I'll have to make a detour tomorrow to take a look at that. But I guess what struck me as hearing this was, if they're actually in flux of doing something right now, it might be worthwhile. And if they don't respond, then their non-response speaks volumes, right? And then all the more reason to continue down the path that you were suggesting. I was more just saying that if they're in the process of doing something, who knows, maybe they're looking to come back and to be in compliance. But that was it. I just wanted to share. Again, outsider's opinion here. I don't have the same context you all do. I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So might I recommend I reach out to Capital Group and say what is going on. At the same time, prepare a letter to the building commissioner explaining the past, what that they came before us before, and we were hoping that something would be done, and that we see these new potential infractions or non-compliance issues at the site. And I could probably take a trip to the site and maybe even write a few of them so that it's pretty clear. Take some pictures, include them with the email. Start there and then wait to get feedback from the building commissioner. And then what that team what the intent is, how non-compliant, obviously pretty good now, and then what is the problem? And it's kind of like we need to do something more than just a letter saying you need to do X, Y, Z from the building commissioner. If there weren't fines before, encourage the building commissioner to take a harder stance. And I can put that on the letter, circulate it to the planning board members before I send it out, so that you can individually comment if you want me to advocate something out, and then we'll get that ball rolling to take that path step by step. Because we have a couple of things like this that are just pending, and when there's time, we try to.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm in favor, as long as it's clear that it's not just Karina, it's the entire planning board.
Absolutely. So
Supporting
my
us.
call will be
Yeah.
as the town planner to the developer, to the property owner.
Yeah.
And then the letter will be an official from the planning board, which you guys can review before I send it out to the code enforcement officer. And I'll have to check protocol if we CC Pebble Beach properties with that letter, or if you just send it to the building commissioner. I mean, what do you think? Is it a letter that I should, because he's gonna know because I'm gonna call him. So he's gonna be aware that there's a problem, look what's going on. I'll note down what he tells me, then draft the letter, and maybe he should be copied on it.
Yeah.
And just start
Thank
getting the
you.
muscle out.
Are you okay with that avenue, Andrew?
You got a thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
All right, on to the next. Planners report.
Yes. Couple of things. First of all, our former planning board chair, Mr. Morris, came by the office
Yes.
yesterday afternoon. Was it this morning?
No, it's today.
It was today. I'm sorry. It's Monday. I'm sorry. It's been one day. I'm so smart. And he provided this thank you letter to everybody
Oh,
for all the nice things, and he wrote, if you want to read it.
Goodness.
do you want me to read it out loud or should I pass it down?
It's very professional.
Yes. Can you read that one?
Yeah.
I don't know, I would say keep it to us. I don't think the public needs to hear a thank you note.
Yeah, it's a nice thing.
That's my, I wouldn't want mine read. Mine are very heartfelt. I don't need
Red.
You can still.
Yeah,
All right,
keep-
we-
keep
okay.
going.
I'm sorry, I was like.
I can listen too.
All right, another point is, as you're aware, July 15th, right now, the provisions for remote hearings will terminate on July 15th. After that time, you'll need, well, we can do hybrid, but you need an in-person quorum. And the chair has to be present in person. If the chair can't be present, then the chair will need to designate someone who's in person as the chair for that.
The vice chair.
And after July 15th, if you're going to participate remotely, you need to fill out a form, which the chair has to sign, and it gets filed with the town clerk before the meeting.
So that reverts back to the old rules. That's the
Yes.
same rules.
Yeah. And we have that form, so if that ever happens, we'll send it to you, to Mimi, you can fill it out and we'll get it to the town clerk. Next thing is, Juneteenth is a holiday now, June 20th. So this is that form I was telling you about, it's just it's on the website. I already told you about special town meeting. Remote meetings. Melissa Danza has conservation agents sent out to different entities. They'll be hosting a webinar on June 15th at 5:30 via Zoom for nature-based solutions with examples from around Southborough. So if anyone's interested, it's in the planners report for that workshop. Okay, the last thing is, two more things. Open space monitoring for fiscal year 2022. The contract was signed as anticipated, and notices to property owners have been sent out into a butter, so they're aware that there's a person going to be walking around the neighborhoods. Once that information comes in, we'll have a draft report, which should be before June 30th. And we'll share that with the planning board members. And then the last thing is, it was performance evaluation time for June 1st, they were due. I don't know if you want to speak to it, but I prepared Colleen's and we submitted that. And I believe that will go to the personnel board now, and many of which those go under a consent agenda item once they review them. So there was the performance evaluation that fills out all the information that gets filed with Vanessa Hale, and then there's a certification letter by the person doing the review that goes to the personnel board, and that's what we'll put that. And one was prepared for me as well.
Yes, and Karina sent out hers that went to everybody. And Barney and I discussed it and thought Karina deserved a higher than a 3% raise. And we also upped her evaluation of herself in several categories. Thinking, yes, that she just does an outstanding job, and the fact that she's a professional engineer has been invaluable to the planning department. And always goes over and above, was a team player, reaches out to all other departments, just on and on and on. And then I spoke with Dorian Jasinski, who's on the personnel board, because I'm unfamiliar with this part of the planning board, the evaluation process, about how to request a larger than 3% increase. And heard back from her that you cannot, that 3% is the largest increase, and that was approved on the SAP that was approved at town meeting.
For SAP.
SAP. Yes.
Just a comment. I don't like that rule, and I wish that, because my hope is that at least there's equitable distribution, so not everybody gets 3%, right? That meets expectations get 3%, and exceptional, which I believe, Karina, you're an exceptional employee. I think the town of Southborough is really privileged to have you working here, and I think it's amazing that we are getting your invaluable guidance, your engineering background. I learned you were certified in soil. Like, you have all of these amazing traits and capabilities that you bring to the table, beyond which you leverage to collaborate cross-functionally, despite all obstacles, like moving people physically out of your office. You have been able to maintain just exceptional relationships in the town to make sure that we truly do have a right lens and a holistic view on what's happening as a planning board. So we are indebted to you. And I just want to say, for the record, I think it's very disappointing that exceptional might be the same as a meets expectations, because you are exceptional.
Well, thank you very much. There may be opportunity, if it's planned in the fiscal year budget for 24, because we already have 23 approved at the last town meeting. So there's always potential in that way. We can handle it that way, but it would probably require, it does require a meeting with the personnel board up front to discuss it and let them know the initiative, and then maybe that's an avenue. Then there was going to be some outreach to our project to see if that's the appropriate way to do it. But thank you.
And just for the record, Karina was very uncomfortable that we recommended a higher than the standard increase.
No, I tell them to do.
She read me every rule and every regulation. I said, you deserve it. Let's see what happens.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for doing what you do. I have a great support system with the board and now with Colleen here too. Previously Sarah. Can't do it alone. Thank you. So, we have meeting minutes, we have one set of meeting minutes if you have a chance to review. And that's the May 9th. They went there pretty late. today. So if you're not comfortable, we can push that one and we'll have the 23rd and this one at the 20th.
So which ones aren't ready?
May
May
9th.
9th?
They
Make a
are,
motion, we approve the meeting minutes from May 23rd.
no, it's May
No, no,
23rd,
it's
that's
not.
not ready.
Oh, I thought that, I make a motion, we approve the meeting minutes from May 9th, 2022, as written.
Second,
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor? Latrell abstain.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Well done, Kate.
Yeah, super.
I didn't get to those minutes.
You're fine. You got too many other
We
things.
got that one covered.
Kate drafts them really great. I review them before they go back.
They're
Kate makes any final
always-
edits
yeah,
and then they
They're
go
always
back to it.
fabulous.
So they're vetted a couple times, so. But if anything does.
I
come up,
try and find like a comma or just something to prove that I've read them.
The Oxford comma, which no one seems to be.
That's fine. So the next meeting is July 27th.
Motion to adjourn.
It's June 27th,
Oh,
What did I say?
July.
June
I'm sorry, I
27th,
wrote July too.
next meeting.
Second,
Motion to adjourn, any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, Andrew, feel better.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Oh,
Now we're adjourned.
Damn it, you got that. Knock it.